The courtroom door slammed open like a gunshot. Elena Voss stood frozen as Victor Hale, the man who'd controlled her for 8 years, the man she'd spent 3 years running from, strode into the small coastal courthouse with an army of lawyers behind him. His smile was surgical, predatory. He'd found her, and he'd come to take Noah. "Miss Voss," the judge said, voice cutting through her panic. "Do you have legal representation?" Elena's hands trembled on the table. She had nothing, no lawyer, no money, no witness who could stand against a man worth $40 million. Only the truth. And in rooms like this, the truth had never been enough. But this story doesn't begin in a courtroom. It begins 3 months earlier, on a beach, with a woman in a red bikini who'd forgotten how to trust, and a widower who'd forgotten how to hope. If you're watching from anywhere in the world, drop your city in the comments below. I want to see how far this story travels. And if you believe broken people can find each other and become whole again, hit that like button. Now, let me take you back to where it all started. The moving truck's engine ticked in the summer heat, slowly cooling after the 6-hour drive from the city. Daniel Hayes sat in the driver's seat, windows down, staring at the small beach house that was supposed to represent a fresh start. The paint was peeling. The porch sagged slightly on the left side. Through the rear-view mirror, he could see his daughter Emma in the back seat, 7 years old, clutching the stuffed rabbit her mother had given her 4 birthdays ago. 3 years. 3 years since Sarah died, and the weight of her absence still pressed against his chest every morning when he woke up. "Daddy?" Emma's voice was small. "Is this our new house?" Daniel turned, forcing brightness into his expression. "It is, sweetheart. What do you think?" Emma peered through the window at the weathered structure. "It looks sad." The observation hit harder than it should have. "Well," Daniel said, unbuckling his seatbelt, "maybe we can make it happy again." They spent the first hour unloading boxes, Daniel carrying the heavy items while Emma insisted on dragging her own small suitcase up the porch steps. The interior smelled like salt air and old wood, but it was clean. The previous owners had left it in good condition, just empty, waiting to be filled with life again. By late afternoon, Daniel had assembled Emma's bed and unpacked enough kitchen supplies to make dinner. But Emma had been unusually quiet, playing with her rabbit on the floor, drawing absent patterns on the dusty window pane. "Em?" Daniel knelt beside her. "You okay?" She looked up at him with Sarah's eyes, that same deep brown that could see straight through any pretense. "Are we going to be happy here?" The question lodged in his throat. He'd moved them to Crescent Bay precisely to find an answer to that question, leaving behind the apartment where every corner held a memory, the job that had become suffocating, the well-meaning friends who kept saying time heals everything as if grief operated on a schedule. "I hope so," he said honestly. "But hey, I have an idea. We've been working hard. Want to go check out the beach before dinner?" For the first time that day, Emma's face brightened. "Really? Can I bring my bucket?" "Absolutely." 20 minutes later, they walked down the weathered wooden stairs that led from the bluff to the sand. The beach was nearly empty, just a handful of people scattered across the wide expanse of coastline. The sun hung low, painting the water gold and orange. Emma immediately kicked off her shoes and ran toward the waves, her laughter carried back on the ocean breeze. Daniel stood watching her, something tight in his chest finally loosening. This was why he'd come. To see his daughter smile without shadows behind it. He walked slowly after her, letting the sand work between his toes, breathing in the salt air. Emma was already crouched at the water's edge, digging in the wet sand with her hands since she'd forgotten her bucket in her excitement. That's when Daniel saw her. A woman stood waist-deep in the surf about 30 yards down the beach, facing the horizon. She wore a striking red bikini that stood out against the blue water like a flame. Dark hair fell past her shoulders, lifting slightly in the breeze. There was something about the way she stood, perfectly still, arms at her sides, that made her seem less like someone enjoying the ocean and more like someone trying to disappear into it. Daniel looked away quickly, redirecting his attention to Emma. Other people's solitude was their own business. But then Emma, in that fearless way children have, suddenly took off running down the beach toward the woman, waving her arms. "Hi! Hi! Do you see the dolphins?" Daniel's heart jumped. "Emma, wait!" He jogged after her, But Emma had already reached the woman, pointing excitedly at something in the water. The woman turned, and Daniel got his first clear look at her face. She was probably in her early 30s with high cheekbones and striking green eyes that seemed almost startling in their intensity. But it wasn't her beauty that made Daniel slow his approach. It was the expression she wore. Guarded, wary, like someone who'd learned not to trust unexpected approaches. "I'm so sorry," Daniel said, reaching them. "Emma, you can't just run up to people." "There's dolphins," Emma insisted, still pointing. "3 of them. Did you see?" The woman's expression softened slightly as she looked at Emma. "I saw them," she said quietly. Her voice had a slight roughness to it, like she didn't use it often. "They come by most evenings around this time." "Really?" Emma's eyes went wide. "Do you live here? Do you see them every day?" "Emma," Daniel said gently, touching his daughter's shoulder, "let's give the lady some space." The woman looked at Daniel properly for the first time, and something flickered across her face, an assessment, quick and thorough. Then her gaze dropped to Emma again, and the guardedness eased slightly. "It's okay," she said. "And yes, I live here, in that house." She gestured toward the bluff where a small cottage sat among the seagrass, painted pale blue with white trim. "We just moved here," Emma announced. "We're in the sad house, but Daddy says we're going to make it happy." The woman's lips twitched, almost but not quite a smile. "The Mitchell place?" "If that's the one with the sagging porch," Daniel said. "Yeah." "It has good bones," the woman said. "Just needs some attention." There was a pause, the kind that could either extend into conversation or close into polite dismissal. Daniel could see the woman considering which direction to take it. "I'm Daniel Hayes," he said, making the decision for her. "This is Emma." Another pause. Then, "Elena Voss." "Nice to meet you," Daniel said. And again, "Sorry about Emma's enthusiasm. She's friendly." "I can tell." Elena looked down at Emma again. "You should be careful running up to strangers, though. Not everyone is safe." It was a strange thing to say, not wrong, but delivered with a weight that suggested personal experience. Emma, unbothered, just nodded seriously. "Daddy tells me that too. But you seem nice." "Seem," Elena repeated, and this time there was definitely a smile, small and sad. That's the important word. Before Daniel could respond, a voice called out from further up the beach. "Mom! Mom! Look what I found!" A boy, maybe 9 or 10, came running toward them holding something cupped in his hands. He was thin, with dark hair similar to Elena's and the same intense green eyes. When he saw Daniel and Emma, he slowed, his expression shifting to something cautious. "Noah," Elena said, and her voice changed, became warmer, gentler. "What did you find?" The boy approached slowly, keeping his mother between himself and the strangers. He opened his hands to reveal a perfect sand dollar, unbroken. "That's amazing," Emma breathed, stepping closer. "Can I see?" Noah looked at his mother. Elena nodded slightly. "Okay," Noah said quietly, holding it out for Emma to examine without touching. "I'm Emma. We just moved into the house up there," she pointed. "The sad one." "I know that house," Noah said. "Old Mister. Mitchell used to let me help him in his garden sometimes." "Did he grow vegetables?" Emma asked. "Tomatoes mostly, and some herbs." As the children talked, Daniel found himself standing beside Elena, both of them watching the interaction. Up close, he could see the tension she held in her shoulders, the way her eyes constantly tracked her son's movements. "How old is Noah?" Daniel asked quietly. 9. Elena's arms were crossed, but loosely, a habitual defensive posture rather than an aggressive one. "Emma." 7, just finished 2nd grade. "Noah just finished 4th. They fell into silence again. Daniel searched for something to say that wouldn't be intrusive, but Elena spoke first. "The Mitchell house has a good yard for a kid," she said. "Privacy fence, flat ground. Emma will like it." "Yeah?" Daniel smiled slightly. "Good to know. We're kind of starting over here. New town, new school in the fall. Trying to reset." Elena looked at him sharply, and he realized he'd said too much. Her expression closed off slightly. "Everyone comes to Crescent Bay to reset," she said. It's that kind of place. The words could have been welcoming, but the tone was neutral, careful. Daniel recognized the sound of someone who'd been hurt by people who wanted too much, too fast. Well, he said, taking a step back, we should let you get back to your swim. Come on, Em. Emma looked disappointed. But Noah was going to show me where the best shells are. Noah looked at his mother hopefully. Elena's jaw tightened, and for a moment Daniel thought she'd say no, but then she exhaled, shoulders dropping slightly. 10 minutes, she said. Stay where I can see you. Both children lit up and took off down the beach, Noah pointing at various spots in the sand while Emma chattered excitedly. Daniel and Elena stood together in awkward proximity, two strangers bound by the temporary obligation of watching their children play. We really can go, Daniel said. I don't want to impose on your evening. You're not imposing, Emma is. But there was no heat in it, just statement of fact. Then, after a pause, that was a joke. Oh, Daniel smiled. Sorry, still calibrating. To what? New place, new people, the art of small talk with strangers on beaches. Elena turned to look at him directly, and her gaze was assessing again. You're not very good at it. No, Daniel admitted. I'm really not. Good. She turned back to watch the children. I don't trust people who are. It was such an odd thing to say that Daniel didn't know how to respond. They stood in silence for a while, watching Emma and Noah crouch over something in the sand. So what brought you to Crescent Bay? Elena asked finally. Besides the reset. Daniel considered how much to share. My wife died 3 years ago. We needed a change of scenery. Elena's expression didn't change. No shock, no sympathy, just a slight nod. I'm sorry. Thank you. He paused. What about you? Are you from here originally? No. That was all she offered. But you've been here a while. 3 years. She glanced at him. We moved here for a reset too. The parallel wasn't lost on Daniel. 3 years. The same amount of time he'd spent learning to be a single parent. Must be something in the water, he said lightly. Must be. Down the beach, Emma shrieked with delight as a wave washed over her feet. Noah laughed, the sound carrying on the wind. Elena's whole posture changed when she heard it, softened, opened. He doesn't laugh much anymore, she said quietly, almost to herself. Emma either, Daniel said, not like she used to. Elena looked at him, and for just a moment, the guard dropped completely. He saw exhaustion there, and wariness, and something that looked like recognition, the kind that passes between people who've walked similar roads. Then Noah called out, Mom, can Emma come see our tide pools tomorrow? Elena's walls went back up instantly. We'll see, she called back. That means no, Noah said to Emma, his voice flat with resignation. Emma's face fell. Oh. Daniel felt the shift, saw Elena's expression tighten with something that looked like guilt and frustration tangled together. It means we'll see, Elena said more firmly. We don't make plans with people we just met. It was a reasonable boundary, but the way she said it made it sound like a life rule rather than a parenting choice. Noah's shoulders slumped slightly, but he nodded. We should go anyway, Daniel said quickly, wanting to ease the tension. Emma, say thank you to Noah for showing you around. Thank you. Emma ran back up to them. And thank you, Miss Elena. You have really pretty hair. Elena blinked, clearly not expecting the compliment. Thank you, Emma. As they walked away, Emma turned back twice to wave at Noah, who waved back hesitantly. Daniel could feel Elena's gaze on them until they reached the stairs. She was sad, Emma said as they climbed. Who, Elena? Yeah, and Noah too. They both seemed sad. Daniel looked back once more. Elena and Noah were walking up the beach toward their cottage, not touching, maintaining a careful distance, even from each other. Maybe, Daniel said. But everyone's fighting their own battles, sweetheart. We can't know what they are. I like Noah, Emma said. I hope we can be friends. We'll see, Daniel said, then caught himself using Elena's exact phrase. The next morning, Daniel woke to sunlight streaming through curtains he hadn't bothered to close. For a moment, he didn't remember where he was. Then reality settled back in. New house, new town, new life. He could hear Emma in the kitchen talking to herself as she often did when she played. He got up, pulled on jeans and a t-shirt, and found her making an elaborate pretend breakfast for her stuffed animals. "Morning, Chef," he said. "Morning, Daddy. I'm making pancakes for Rabbit and Bear. They're very hungry." "I bet." He started the coffee maker, one of the first things he'd unpacked. "Want real breakfast? Can we have pancakes too?" "We can have pancakes too." While he cooked, Emma chattered about the beach, about Noah, about the dolphins she wanted to see again. Daniel listened, asking questions, grateful for her excitement. The move had been hard on her, leaving her friends, her school, the only home she really remembered. They were halfway through breakfast when someone knocked on the front door. Daniel wasn't expecting anyone. He didn't know anyone. He glanced at Emma, who looked equally curious, and went to answer it. Elena Voss stood on his sagging porch, wearing jean shorts and a white tank top, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. She looked uncomfortable. "Hi," Daniel said, surprised. "How what?" Elena shifted her weight. Noah wanted me to ask if Emma would like to come see the tide pools this afternoon. Around 3, when they're best." Daniel processed this. "Oh, yeah, she'd love that." "Good." Elena nodded, already turning to leave. "Elena?" She turned back. "Do you want to come in? I just made coffee." She looked at the open door, at the glimpse of the kitchen beyond, at Emma visible at the table. Something conflicted crossed her face. "No," she said. "Thank you. But 3 o'clock? At the beach stairs? We'll be there." She nodded again and left, walking quickly back toward her cottage. Daniel closed the door slowly, puzzled. She'd come all the way over to deliver a message she could have called about, if she'd wanted his number. Instead, she'd walked over personally, then refused to stay for even a moment longer than necessary. "Was that Miss Elena?" Emma appeared at his elbow. "Yeah, you're invited to see tide pools this afternoon." "But us." Emma's face lit up like sunrise. "Really? With Noah?" "Yep." "Can I wear my new swimsuit?" "Definitely." Emma ran off to her room, already planning her outfit. Daniel returned to the kitchen, poured his coffee, and looked out the window toward the blue cottage visible through the trees. Elena Voss was a puzzle, and Daniel, despite every intention to keep his life simple and focused on Emma, found himself curious about what the pieces might reveal. At exactly 3 o'clock, Daniel and Emma arrived at the beach stairs. Elena and Noah were already there, Noah carrying a small bucket and wearing a serious expression. "Ready?" Noah asked Emma. "So ready." The children took off down the stairs while Daniel and Elena followed at a more sedate pace. "Thank you for this," Daniel said. "Emma hasn't been this excited about something in a while." "Noah either." Elena kept her eyes on the children. "He doesn't make friends easily. Emma usually does, but the move has been hard on her." They reached the beach and followed the children south, toward a rocky outcrop that Daniel hadn't noticed the day before. The tide was low, revealing clusters of dark rocks covered in barnacles and mussels. Noah led Emma to a large tide pool, crouching down to point out the creatures living in the small ecosystem. A tiny crab scuttled between rocks. Sea anemones waved their tentacles gently in the remaining water. "Wow," Emma breathed. "It's like a whole little world." "There's dozens of them along here," Noah said. He was animated now, his earlier wariness gone. "You have to be careful where you step, and don't take anything home. They need to stay in their environment." "Okay." Emma leaned over the pool, fascinated. Daniel and Elena sat on a nearby rock watching the children explore. The silence between them was less awkward than yesterday, but still careful. "Noah knows a lot about marine life," Daniel observed. "He reads about it constantly. Ocean biology, marine ecosystems, conservation." Elena smiled slightly. "He wants to be a marine biologist when he grows up." "That's specific for a 9-year-old. He's always been specific about things, focused." The smile faded. "His father used to say he was obsessive, too intense." Used to, past tense. Daniel noted it but didn't comment. "Emma wants to be a veterinarian," he offered, "or a baker, or possibly a mermaid. It changes weekly." That earned a small laugh from Elena, the first he'd heard from her. It transformed her face, made her look younger, less burdened. I like that she has options, Elena said. They watched the children move from pool to pool, Noah explaining things with serious expertise while Emma listened with rapt attention. How long were you married? Elena asked suddenly. The question surprised Daniel. 12 years. We met in college. That's a long time. Yeah, he paused. Cancer. It was fast, 6 months from diagnosis to the end. In some ways that was a mercy, in others it wasn't enough time. Elena nodded slowly. I was married for 8 years. It felt like 80. The bitterness in her voice was sharp, unguarded. Daniel glanced at her. Divorced? Separated. The divorce was finalized 2 years ago. She pulled her knees up, wrapping her arms around them. He didn't fight it, didn't want custody, just wanted out. I'm sorry. Don't be. Best thing that ever happened to me. But the way she said it suggested the opposite, that it had been necessary but devastating. Is that when you came to Crescent Bay? Right after. Needed to disappear for a while. Disappear. Interesting word choice. From what? Daniel asked gently. Elena's jaw tightened. For a moment he thought she wouldn't answer, had pushed too far. Then she said very quietly, from who I became when I was with him. But the weight of that statement settled between them. Daniel understood it, the way trauma could reshape you, make you unrecognizable to yourself. He'd felt it after Sarah died, that sense of being a stranger in his own life. Does Noah see his father? He asked. No. Flat, final. It's not an option. Before Daniel could respond, Emma called out, Daddy, come see, there's a starfish. He stood, grateful for the interruption. As he walked toward the tide pool, he glanced back at Elena. She sat alone on the rock, arms still wrapped around her knees, staring out at the ocean with an expression of such profound sadness that he had to look away. The afternoon stretched into early evening. Noah and Emma explored every tide pool within safe walking distance, their initial shyness completely gone. They talked about school, about favorite books, about the beach. Emma asked 100 questions about ocean life, and Noah answered every one with patient detail. Daniel and Elena maintained their careful distance, sitting or standing near each other but not quite together, trading occasional observations about the children but not much else. As the sun started to dip lower, Noah checked a watch he wore. Mom, it's almost 6. Okay. Elena stood immediately. Time to go. Already? Emma looked disappointed. We need to get home, Noah said, but he looked disappointed too. Can we do this again? Emma asked hopefully. Noah looked at his mother. Elena hesitated, and Daniel could see the internal struggle, the desire to say yes warring with the instinct to maintain distance. Maybe, she said finally. We'll see. That means no again, Noah said to Emma, his voice resigned. Noah, Elena's tone was sharp. It means we'll see. Don't put words in my mouth. Noah flinched slightly, and Elena's expression immediately flooded with regret. I'm sorry, she said more gently. I just mean we need to see how the week goes, okay? Noah nodded, not looking at her. The walk back to the stairs was quiet. At the top where their paths diverged, Noah turned to Emma. I had fun, he said. Me too. Emma beamed. Thank you for showing me the tide pools. You're welcome. Noah, Elena said quietly. Go ahead. I'll be right there. Noah nodded and started toward their cottage. Elena turned to Daniel. Thank you for coming. Thank you for inviting us. Emma had a great time. So did Noah. She paused. I'm not very good at this. At what? People. Making friends. Letting people in. She looked toward her cottage where Noah had stopped to wait for her. I have reasons. Good ones. But they hurt Noah sometimes, and I hate that. You're protecting him, Daniel said. Am I? Elena's eyes were suddenly fierce. Or am I just passing on my damage? The question was so raw, so honest, that Daniel didn't have an easy answer. I think, he said carefully, that you're doing the best you can. That's all any of us can do. Elena studied him for a long moment. You're very kind. I'm very practiced at pretending I have answers when I don't. That earned a small, sad smile. At least you're honest about it. She started to walk away, then turned back. Daniel? If Emma wants to come over tomorrow afternoon, she can. Noah has a collection of shells and beach glass he'd probably love to show her. She'd like that. What time? 2? We'll be there. Elena nodded and walked away quickly, like she was afraid she might change her mind if she stayed any longer. Emma tugged on Daniel's hand. Daddy, I really like them. I can tell. But Miss Elena is sad, isn't she? Like, really sad. Daniel looked at the blue cottage, where Elena and Noah had just disappeared inside. Yeah, sweetheart. I think she is. Can we help her? It was such a simple question, so full of childlike faith that broken things could be fixed. I don't know, Daniel said honestly, but we can be kind. Sometimes that's enough. Emma considered this seriously. Okay, I'm going to be extra kind to Noah. He seems sad too. As they walked back to their house, Daniel thought about Elena's words. I have reasons. Good ones. What kind of marriage left someone so afraid of connection that they had to build walls between themselves and the world? What kind of ex-husband made a woman feel she needed to disappear? And why did he care so much about finding out? The next afternoon, Daniel and Emma walked to the blue cottage. It was smaller than their place, but better maintained with neat flower boxes under the windows and a well-kept front yard. Emma knocked on the door, practically vibrating with excitement. Elena answered, looking slightly less guarded than usual. Come in? The interior was sparse but comfortable. Minimal furniture, very few personal items, everything in shades of blue and white that echoed the ocean outside. It had the feeling of a temporary space, like its occupants hadn't fully committed to being there. Noah appeared from a hallway. Hi, Emma. Come see my collection. The children disappeared into Noah's room. Elena gestured to the small kitchen. Coffee? Sure, thank you. Daniel sat at the small table while Elena made coffee with practiced efficiency. The kitchen was meticulously organized, everything in its place. Through the window, he could see their stretch of beach, currently empty. Nice view, he said. It's why I took this place. The house doesn't matter, but the ocean... She paused, pouring coffee. The ocean is honest, doesn't pretend to be anything other than what it is. Daniel accepted the mug she offered. That's an interesting way to put it. Most people aren't honest. Elena sat across from him. They smile and lie and hide what they really want until it's too late to protect yourself from it. It was a harsh worldview, and Daniel wondered what had shaped it. Some people are honest, he said gently. Are you? I try to be. Why? Because lying takes too much energy, and I barely have enough as it is. Elena laughed, actually laughed, and the sound was surprised, like it had escaped before she could stop it. That's fair? They sipped their coffee in silence. Down the hall, they could hear Emma exclaiming over Noah's treasures. He's been collecting for 3 years, Elena said. Every piece means something to him. There's stories attached to each one, where he found it, what the weather was like, what he was thinking about. He's a thoughtful kid. Too thoughtful sometimes, too aware. Elena's fingers tightened on her mug. He's had to grow up too fast. Emma too, Daniel said. When Sarah got sick, Emma knew. She was only 4, but she knew. And after, she became this little adult overnight. Too careful, too worried about me. How do you handle it? The guilt of what they've lost? The question cut straight to the center of Daniel's chest. I don't. I just carry it and try not to let it crush me. Elena nodded slowly. That's honest. You asked for honesty. I did. She looked at him directly. Daniel, I need to tell you something. Her tone had changed, become more serious. Daniel set down his coffee, giving her his full attention. Okay. Elena took a breath. My ex-husband, Victor, he's not a good person. And before you invite Noah and me into your life, into Emma's life, you should know that being associated with me might complicate things for you. Complicated how? Victor is wealthy, very wealthy, and he has a long memory for things he considers his. She paused. I don't think he'll come looking for us. I've been careful. But if he did, you're afraid he'd hurt Noah? I'm afraid he'd take him. The words came out harsh, frightened. He didn't want custody when we divorced. He made that very clear. But Victor doesn't like losing, and he really doesn't like thinking I got away with something. If he decided Noah was leverage or punishment or just a possession he didn't want someone else to have. She stopped, pressing her palms against her eyes. Daniel could see her hands shaking. Elena, he said gently. Did he hurt you? She lowered her hands. Her eyes were dry but bright with suppressed emotion. Not physically. Victor was too smart for that. But there are other ways to hurt someone, ways that don't leave bruises. Daniel understood. Emotional abuse, control, manipulation, all the invisible wounds that people dismissed because they couldn't see them. I'm not asking you to take on my problems, Elena continued. I'm just saying you should know what you're walking into if the kids become friends. If we become friends. Okay, Daniel said. Thank you for telling me. Elena blinked. That's it? No questions? No running for the hills? Should I be running? Most people would. I'm not most people. And honestly, Elena, everyone has complicated history. Mine just happens to be written in medical records instead of court documents. He paused. Besides, Emma's already decided she and Noah are best friends. Try explaining to a 7-year-old that she can't play with someone because their mom's ex-husband is a vindictive asshole. Elena's eyes widened slightly. Then she laughed. A real laugh this time, full and genuine. Fair point. So we're clear? You know I know, and we're still whatever this is? I guess we are. She stood, picking up their mugs. But if things get weird, if Victor shows up or causes problems, I want you to distance yourself immediately. I mean it, Daniel. Protect Emma first. I always do, he said. But I don't think you being careful and keeping Noah safe makes you someone we need protection from. Elena stared at him for a long moment, something shifting in her expression. You're either very brave or very stupid. Probably both. Fair enough. No. Over the next 2 weeks, a careful rhythm developed. Emma and Noah played together several times a week, either at the beach or one of their houses. Daniel and Elena existed in the orbit of their children's friendship, polite and increasingly comfortable with each other, but still maintaining careful boundaries. Daniel learned that Elena worked remotely as a graphic designer, which allowed her flexibility with Noah. She learned that Daniel was a software developer doing freelance work while he looked for a permanent position in the area. They talked about safe things, work, the town, their kids, and avoided the deeper waters of their respective pasts. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, those boundaries began to soften. It happened in small moments. Elena staying for an extra cup of coffee after dropping Noah off. Daniel helping her carry groceries up from her car when he happened to be outside. Conversations that lasted longer than strictly necessary, ranging from favorite books to childhood memories to the specific shade of blue the ocean turned at sunset. 3 weeks after they met, Daniel invited Elena and Noah to dinner. Nothing fancy, he said. Just burgers on the grill. Emma's been asking. Elena hesitated, and Daniel could see the war in her expression, wanting to say yes, afraid of what yes might mean. Please? Emma added, appearing at Daniel's elbow. Noah said he's never had a cookout before. That decided it. Something pained crossed Elena's face. Okay, yes, thank you. They came over Saturday evening. Noah was quiet but curious, his eyes taking in every detail of the house and yard. Emma gave him a comprehensive tour while Daniel grilled and Elena helped prepare sides in the kitchen. This is nice, Elena said, slicing tomatoes. The whole domestic thing. Yeah? Daniel flipped a burger. You say that like it's surprising. Victor never cooked. Never wanted to. Said it was demeaning. She paused. Which should have been my first clue, honestly. People who think feeding their family is demeaning are missing the point of family. What is the point? The question was genuine, searching. Daniel thought about it. Taking care of each other, being a soft place to land. Elena was quiet for a moment. That sounds nice. Sarah was good at it, Daniel said. The soft place part. I'm still learning. You seem pretty good to me. The compliment caught him off guard. When he looked at her, Elena was focused intently on the tomatoes, but there was color in her cheeks. Thanks, he said quietly. They ate on the back patio as the sun set. Emma and Noah chattering about a fort they wanted to build on the beach. Daniel watched Elena relax incrementally as the evening progressed, her shoulders dropping, her responses coming easier, even a few spontaneous smiles. After dinner, while the kids played in the yard, Elena helped Daniel clean up. "Thank you for this," she said, drying a plate. "Noah hasn't been this happy in I can't remember how long. Emma either. She needed a friend. So did Noah." Elena set the plate down carefully. "So did I." The admission hung in the air between them, weighted with significance. "Me too," Daniel said. Elena looked at him, and for the first time since they'd met, she held his gaze without deflecting or looking away. In her eyes, Daniel saw exhaustion and wariness and fear, but also something fragile and hopeful, like a plant pushing through concrete. "This is scary," she said quietly. "Letting people in." "Yeah," Daniel agreed. It really is. But you're doing it anyway. So are you." She smiled, small and real. "I guess I am." Outside, Emma squealed with laughter as Noah showed her how to catch fireflies. Through the window, Daniel could see his daughter's face lit with pure joy, and something in his chest that had been locked tight since Sarah died loosened just a fraction more. Maybe this was what healing looked like. Not a straight line or a sudden revelation, but small moments of connection, building slowly into something resembling hope. Elena stepped closer to the window, standing beside him to watch the children. Her shoulder brushed his arm, and she didn't move away. "Daniel?" she said softly. "Yeah? I'm glad we met, even though it's scary." "Me too." They stood there together, two broken people watching their children catch light in glass jars, both of them beginning to believe that maybe, just maybe, broken things could be whole again. The fireflies blinked out one by one as darkness settled over the yard, and Elena finally called Noah inside to get ready to leave. Emma protested, insisting they hadn't caught nearly enough light yet, but Daniel gently reminded her it was a school night. Even if school didn't start for another month, routines mattered. At the door, Noah turned to Emma with unusual boldness. "Can we do this again soon?" Before Elena could intercede with her usual careful deflection, Emma grabbed Daniel's hand. "Daddy, can they come for dinner every week? Please?" Daniel glanced at Elena, reading the panic flickering across her face. "How about we start with sometime soon and see how it goes?" "That works," Elena said quickly, relief evident in her voice. But as they walked down the porch steps, Noah looked back with an expression that made Daniel's chest tighten, hope mixed with the expectation of disappointment, like a child who'd learned not to count on good things lasting. After they left, Daniel found Emma on the couch, hugging her rabbit and staring out the window toward the blue cottage, barely visible through the trees in the darkness. "You okay, sweetheart?" "I don't want them to disappear," Emma said quietly. Daniel sat beside her. "What do you mean?" "Sometimes people just go away, like Mom." Her voice was matter-of-fact, but her grip on the rabbit tightened. "And my friend Zoe from before, when we moved, and Mrs. Palmer from school. People just disappear." The observation hit Daniel like a physical blow. He'd known Emma understood death intellectually, but hearing her articulate this broader fear, that anyone could vanish at any moment, revealed how deeply Sarah's loss had marked her. Noah and Elena live right over there. They're not going anywhere." "But what if they do?" Emma looked up at him with those two old eyes. "What if Miss Elena decides she doesn't want to be friends anymore?" Daniel pulled his daughter close. "Then we'll be sad, but we'll be okay. We've survived sad before." "I don't want to survive anymore," Emma whispered. "I want to be happy." The words broke something in Daniel. His 7-year-old daughter had already learned the difference between surviving and living, and she was choosing life even knowing it could hurt her. "Me too, baby," he said. "Me too." The next morning, Daniel woke to his phone buzzing. A text from an unknown number. "It's Elena. Noah gave Emma my number yesterday, apparently. Is that okay?" Daniel saved the contact and replied, "Totally fine. Everything all right?" "Yes. Just wanted to say thank you for last night. Noah hasn't stopped talking about it." "Emma either. Fair warning, she's already planning your next visit." A pause, then, "That's okay. I am too." Daniel stared at those 4 words longer than he should have. There was vulnerability in them, an admission that Elena was choosing connection despite her fear. He understood the courage that required. Over the following days, the texts continued. Small things at first. Elena asking if Daniel knew a good dentist in town. Daniel recommending a pizza place. Shared photos of the kids on the beach. But gradually, the conversations deepened, stretching into late evening exchanges about everything and nothing. Do you ever feel guilty for being happy? Elena texted one night. Every single day, Daniel replied. Like I'm betraying Sarah by moving forward. Victor used to say I didn't deserve to be happy. Some days I still believe him. He was wrong. How do you know? Because nobody deserves to be miserable, not even people who've made mistakes. What if the mistakes were big ones? Daniel stared at that message for a long time before responding. Then you learn from them and do better. That's all any of us can do. The conversation paused for several minutes, then, thank you. For what? For not asking what the mistakes were. Everyone's entitled to their past, Elena. You'll tell me if you want to, or you won't. Either way is fine. Another long pause. You're a good person, Daniel Hayes. I'm really not. I'm just tired of pretending to have all the answers. That might be what makes you good. 2 weeks later, Elena called him instead of texting. Her voice was tight with barely controlled panic. Daniel? I'm sorry to bother you, but I need help. Noah's sick, fever of 103, and I need to get him to urgent care, but my car won't start and I'll be there in 2 minutes. He was there in 90 seconds, finding Elena on her porch with Noah wrapped in a blanket, the boy's face flushed and eyes glassy with fever. Emma was already in the truck, having insisted on coming. Thank you, Elena said as she buckled Noah into the back seat. Her hands were shaking. It's okay. Kids get fevers. It's probably nothing serious. I know, I can't think clearly when he's sick. I panic. Daniel pulled out of the driveway, watching Elena in the rearview mirror. She had her hand on Noah's forehead, murmuring reassurances, but her face was pale with fear that seemed disproportionate to a childhood fever. At the urgent care clinic, Noah was diagnosed with a simple viral infection and sent home with instructions to rest and stay hydrated. But Elena's relief was so profound that she had to sit down in the parking lot, head between her knees, breathing deeply. Elena? Daniel crouched beside her while Emma entertained Noah in the truck with a story about a brave knight who defeated the fever dragon. You okay? I'm sorry. I'm being ridiculous. You're being a scared mom. That's not ridiculous. She looked up at him, eyes bright with unshed tears. When Noah was 5, he got sick, really sick. Victor refused to take him to the hospital, said I was overreacting, being hysterical. By the time I finally took him myself, he had pneumonia. The doctors said if I'd waited another day. She didn't finish, but she didn't need to. But you didn't wait, Daniel said gently. You took him. He was fine. Because I went against Victor, and when we got home, he made sure I understood that defying him had consequences. Her voice dropped to barely a whisper. Noah heard everything. He was so small, and he heard his father screaming at me for saving his life. Daniel felt anger kindle in his chest, hot and righteous. Elena, don't. She stood abruptly. Don't be angry on my behalf. I made choices. I stayed longer than I should have. That's on me. Staying in an abusive relationship doesn't make it your fault that he abused you. Elena stared at him, something cracking in her expression. You said it. The word. What word? Abusive. Everyone else just calls him difficult or says we weren't compatible, like it was just a bad match instead of... She stopped, wrapping her arms around herself. Sorry. I don't know why I'm dumping this on you. Because I asked, and because sometimes you need to say things out loud to someone who will believe you. Elena's eyes filled with tears that she angrily blinked away. We should go. Noah needs to rest. On the drive home, Noah fell asleep against Elena's shoulder. Emma had gone quiet too, sensing the adult tension in the air. When they pulled up to Elena's cottage, Daniel helped carry Noah inside while Emma waited in the truck. Elena settled Noah on the couch with blankets and water nearby, then walked Daniel to the door. Thank you, she said, for everything, the ride, the conversation, all of it. Anytime. I mean that. Daniel. She caught his arm as he turned to leave. Why are you being so kind to us? Why wouldn't I be? Because most people aren't. Most people hear complicated X and run. Or they stick around because they think I'm broken enough to be easy, to not have standards. Her voice hardened. Victor used to say that's all I was good for, being easy for men who wanted something cheap. The casual cruelty of it made Daniel's jaw clench. Victor was a bastard who said terrible things to make himself feel powerful. None of it was true. How do you know? Because I've gotten to know you. You're not easy. You're careful. You're not broken. You're healing. And you have plenty of standards, which is why you're so scared of letting people in. You're afraid they won't meet them and you'll have wasted your trust. Elena stared at him, her breath catching. That's uncomfortably accurate. I pay attention. I've noticed. She paused, then said quietly, You meet them. The standards, just so you know. Daniel's heart did something complicated in his chest. Yeah? Yeah. She smiled, small and genuine. Now go home before I say something else embarrassing. As he walked back to the truck, Daniel felt something he hadn't experienced in 3 years. The flutter of possibility, the sense that maybe his life wasn't finished after all. Emma was watching him with knowing eyes when he got in. You like Miss Elena? She's a good friend, Em. No, Daddy. You like her. The way Prince Philip likes Sleeping Beauty. We're not... Daniel stopped, realizing he was arguing with a 7-year-old about his feelings. It's complicated. Why? Because grown-up feelings are complicated. Emma considered this seriously. Do you think you could love someone again? Like you loved Mommy? The question stole Daniel's breath. I don't know, sweetheart. Maybe. Someday. I think you could, Emma said with certainty, and I think Mommy would want you to be happy. Daniel had to pull over because his vision blurred with tears. Emma unbuckled and climbed into his lap, hugging him fiercely. It's okay to be happy, Daddy, she whispered. We're allowed. The next evening, Elena texted, Noah wants to know if Emma can come over tomorrow. He's feeling better and bored. Definitely. What time? Afternoon? And Daniel, can you stay this time? For coffee or something? Daniel read the message 3 times, parsing the subtext. Elena was asking him to stay, not because the kids needed supervision, but because she wanted his company. I'd like that. When they arrived the next day, Noah was indeed recovered, bouncing around the living room and eager to show Emma his new collection of driftwood pieces. The children disappeared into Noah's room, leaving Daniel and Elena in the kitchen with coffee neither of them really wanted. So, Elena said, sitting across from him, we should probably talk about whatever this is. Daniel appreciated the directness. Okay, what do you want to talk about? Are we friends, or are we something else? I don't know, Daniel said honestly. What do you want to be? Elena laughed, but it was nervous. I haven't dated in 5 years. I don't even know how to think about this. And I have so much baggage that I need my own cargo plane. I have a dead wife and a daughter who's terrified of losing people. I'm not exactly traveling light either. But that's different. Your marriage ended because of tragedy, not because you were systematically destroyed by someone who was supposed to love you. Different doesn't mean easier. Elena nodded slowly. Fair point. She traced the rim of her mug with one finger, not meeting his eyes. Daniel, if we did try something, and I'm not saying we should, you need to know that I'm damaged goods. I have panic attacks sometimes. I don't sleep well. I'm overprotective of Noah to the point of being irrational, and I'm terrified that Victor will come back. Is he likely to? I don't know. Probably not. He made it clear when we divorced that he was done with both of us. But he's unpredictable, and if he ever decided he wanted Noah for some reason, she swallowed hard. I have nightmares about it. Has he threatened that? Not directly, but Victor doesn't make threats. He just acts. Elena finally looked up at him. I left in the middle of the night 3 years ago with Noah and 2 suitcases. I changed our names legally. Elena Voss isn't what I was born with. I've been hiding ever since. Daniel processed this. What name were you born with? I'm not telling you that. I'm sorry, but I can't. If Victor ever came looking and questioned you, She shook her head. It's safer if you don't know. Okay? Daniel accepted this without argument. Anything else I should know? Isn't that enough? Elena, everyone has stuff. Yours is particularly heavy, but it doesn't make you undateable. Doesn't it? Who wants to sign up for a relationship with someone whose ex-husband is a wealthy, vindictive narcissist who might show up at any moment to destroy everything? Someone who thinks you're worth it. The words hung in the air. Elena's eyes widened slightly. And are you? She asked quietly. That someone? Daniel thought about it, really thought about it. He thought about Sarah and the life they'd built, the love they'd shared. He thought about the 3 years of grief and loneliness, of being a single parent, of forgetting what it felt like to want something for himself instead of just for Emma. I think I might be, he said. If you'll let me. Elena stood abruptly, walking to the window. Her shoulders were tense, her arms wrapped around herself in that protective gesture Daniel had come to recognize. I'm scared, she said to the glass. Me too. What if I'm not ready? Then we wait. What if I'm never ready? Then we stay friends. She turned to look at him, vulnerability written across her face. You'd be okay with that? I'd be disappointed, Daniel admitted, but I'd understand. Elena, I'm not Victor. I'm not going to punish you for having boundaries or needing time. How do I know that? You don't. Not for sure. You have to decide if you trust me enough to find out. Elena crossed her arms tighter, her jaw working. Daniel could see the war happening inside her, fear versus hope, past trauma versus present possibility. I want to, she said finally. Trust you, I mean. I want to try. That's enough. That's a start. Is it? Because it doesn't feel like much. It's everything, Daniel said. Trust isn't something you build overnight. It's daily, incremental, small moments that add up over time. Elena moved back to the table, sitting down slowly. You're very patient. I've had a lot of practice waiting for things I couldn't control. Like Sarah dying? Yeah, like that. Do you still love her? The question wasn't jealous or insecure, just genuinely curious. Daniel appreciated that. Yes, he said. But it's different now, less immediate. Like she's a beautiful memory instead of a present reality. He paused. I'll always love her. She gave me Emma, gave me 12 good years. But loving her doesn't mean I can't love someone else. Have you, since she died? No, you're the first person I've even wanted to try with. Elena's expression softened. That's a lot of pressure. Only if we make it that way. Elena, I'm not asking you to be Sarah. I'm not asking you to fix me or fill some void. I'm just asking if you want to have coffee together sometimes. Maybe dinner. See where it goes without expectations. That sounds reasonable. She smiled slightly. Suspiciously reasonable. I contain multitudes. That got a genuine laugh. Okay, let's try. Slowly. Very slowly. However slow you need. And if I panic and push you away, you won't take it personally? I'll give you space, but I won't disappear. Deal? Elena extended her hand across the table. Deal. Daniel shook it, and when Elena didn't immediately let go, just held his hand for a moment longer than necessary, he felt that flutter of possibility again. They started slowly. Coffee dates while the kids were at the community center's summer program. Walks on the beach after dinner. Longer conversations that stretched past midnight via text. Daniel learned that Elena had grown up in Seattle, that she'd wanted to be an artist before Victor convinced her it was impractical, that she loved mystery novels and terrible reality TV and the smell of rain on pavement. Elena learned that Daniel had played guitar in college but hadn't touched one since Sarah died, that he was terrible at cooking anything that didn't involve a grill, that he still sometimes set the table for 3 before catching himself. They learned each other's wounds and worries, sharing them in careful increments. Elena told him about Victor's control tactics, how he'd monitored her phone, her spending, her friendships, how he'd isolated her from family until she had no one to turn to, how he'd convinced her that she was incompetent, unstable, unworthy of love. Daniel told her about watching Sarah fade, about making impossible decisions regarding treatment, about the moment he realized she was gone and he was alone, about the crushing weight of single parenthood, the fear that he was failing Emma, the loneliness of being the only adult in his house. It was healing, this careful exchange of pain, like lancing wounds that had festered too long. 6 weeks after their first coffee date, though neither of them had explicitly called it that, Daniel invited Elena to a local art fair. Emma and Noah were having a play date at a neighbor's house, leaving them an afternoon alone. Elena wore a sundress the color of wine, her hair loose around her shoulders. Daniel couldn't stop looking at her. "You're staring," she said, but she smiled. "You look beautiful." She ducked her head, pleased and embarrassed. Victor used to say I dressed like I was trying too hard. Victor was an idiot. Agreed. They wandered through the booths, looking at paintings and sculptures and handmade jewelry. Elena paused at one display, watercolors of coastal scenes, loose and impressionistic. "These are lovely," she murmured, leaning close to examine the brushwork. The artist, a woman in her 60s with paint-stained fingers, smiled. "Thank you. Do you paint?" "I used to," Elena said. "A long time ago. It's never too late to start again." Elena looked at the paintings with such longing that Daniel made a mental note. When she moved to the next booth, he quietly bought 2 small watercolor sets and had them wrapped. Later, they sat on a bench overlooking the harbor, eating ice cream and watching boats bob in the marina. "This was nice," Elena said. "I can't remember the last time I just enjoyed a day. We should do it more often." "Yeah." She paused. "Daniel, can I ask you something?" "Always." "Do you ever worry that we're using each other? Like you need someone to help you feel less alone, and I need someone to prove Victor wrong about me being unlovable?" It was such a painfully honest question that Daniel had to take a moment to formulate an honest answer. "Maybe at first," he said. "Maybe there's some of that. But Elena, I don't think needing someone and genuinely caring about them are mutually exclusive." "No?" "No. We all need connection. That's human. The question is whether the need is all there is, or if there's something real underneath." "And is there? For you?" Daniel looked at her, at the vulnerability in her eyes, the hope she was trying to hide, the strength it took for her to even ask the question. "Yes," he said simply. "There is." Elena's breath caught. "For me, too." They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of the admission settling between them. Then Elena shifted slightly closer, and Daniel put his arm around her shoulders, and she leaned into him like it was the most natural thing in the world. "This is the part where I'm supposed to panic," she said quietly. "Are you panicking?" "No, that's what's terrifying." Daniel smiled against her hair. "Want me to give you space?" "No, I want you to stay exactly where you are." So he did. The shift in their relationship didn't go unnoticed by the children. Emma started making pointed comments about how Miss Elena smiled more now, how Noah seemed happier, how nice it would be if they were all one family. Noah, more reserved but equally observant, asked Elena if Daniel was her boyfriend. "We're friends," Elena said carefully. "Good friends." "Do good friends hold hands?" Elena looked down at where her fingers were laced with Daniel's as they walked back from the beach. She'd stopped noticing when they did that. Sometimes, yes. "Mom, it's okay if you like him. I like him too." And Emma. The easy acceptance undid something in Elena's chest. "Yeah? Yeah? He makes you laugh. You didn't laugh with Dad." Elena pulled Noah into a hug, overwhelmed. "You're pretty smart for 9, you know that?" "I know," Noah said seriously, making her laugh again. That evening, after Noah was in bed, Elena called Daniel. "Noah gave us his blessing," she said. "Emma's been planning our wedding," Daniel replied. "Apparently it involves dolphins and a castle made of sand." Ambitious. She takes after her mother. There was a comfortable pause. Then Elena said, "Daniel, I think I'm ready." "Ready for what?" "To call this what it is. To stop pretending we're just friends when we're clearly more than that." Daniel's heart rate picked up. "And what are we?" "I don't know, but I'd like to find out, with you, if you still want to." "Elena, I've wanted to since the day you stood in the surf in that red bikini looking like you were trying to become part of the ocean." "That's specific." "I pay attention, remember?" "I remember." Her voice softened. "So we're doing this? Actually doing this?" "If you want to." "I do. I really do. But Daniel, I know. Slowly, carefully, with room to panic if you need to. You're very good at this. At what? Making me feel safe enough to take risks. That might be the nicest thing anyone's ever said to me. Elena laughed, and Daniel could hear the joy in it, the lightness that had been missing from her voice when they first met. Come over tomorrow? She asked. After the kids are asleep? I want to talk about what this means. What we're doing. Make sure we're on the same page. I'll be there. The next evening, Daniel knocked on Elena's door at 9:30. She answered wearing jeans and a soft gray sweater, her hair down, feet bare. She looked relaxed, comfortable, and when she smiled at him, Daniel felt something in his chest expand. Hi, she said. Hi. They stood looking at each other for a moment, and then Elena stepped forward and kissed him. It was brief, tentative, but it sent electricity through Daniel's entire body. When she pulled back, her cheeks were flushed. I've been wanting to do that for weeks, she admitted. Feel free to do it again anytime. She laughed and pulled him inside. They settled on the couch with wine, angled toward each other, knees touching. So, Elena said, ground rules. Okay. I need this to stay between us for a while. Not because I'm ashamed, but because I need to know it's real before we make it public, before we tell the kids officially. They already know. They suspect. That's different from us confirming it. Once we do that, it becomes real for them too. And if this doesn't work out, she trailed off. They'll be hurt, Daniel finished. I get it. How long? I don't know. A few months? Until we're sure we're not just lonely people filling empty spaces in each other's lives. Fair enough. What else? I'm going to panic sometimes. Push you away when I get scared. I need you to understand that's my trauma talking, not how I actually feel about you. Okay, but I need you to understand that I'm going to push back sometimes. Not aggressively, but I won't just let you shut me out completely. I'll give you space, but I won't disappear. Elena nodded slowly. I can work with that. And I need you to tell me if I'm moving too fast or asking too much. I won't always know your boundaries until you voice them. Same goes for you. If I'm too much, too damaged, too complicated, you have to tell me. Daniel took her hand. Elena, you're not too anything. You're exactly right. Her eyes filled with tears. Don't say things like that if you don't mean them. I mean them. How can you know? You barely know me. I know enough. I know you're strong and careful and brave as hell. I know you love Noah fiercely and you've rebuilt your life from nothing. I know you're scared, but you're trying anyway. That's all I need to know. Elena set down her wine and kissed him again, deeper this time, her hands cupping his face. When they broke apart, she was smiling and crying at the same time. This is terrifying, she whispered. I know, but I want it anyway. Me too. They stayed on the couch until midnight, talking and kissing and making plans. Small plans, dinner dates, weekend trips to nearby towns, movie nights after the kids were asleep. Building something careful and deliberate, one moment at a time. When Daniel finally left, walking through the cool night air back to his house, he felt lighter than he had in years. The grief was still there, would always be there, but it no longer consumed everything. There was room now for joy, for hope, for possibility, for Elena. Inside his house, Emma was asleep on the couch, having waited up for him despite his instructions. Daniel carried her to bed, tucking her in with her rabbit. Daddy? She mumbled, half asleep. Did you kiss Miss Elena? Daniel smiled. Maybe. Good. You should be happy. I am, sweetheart. I really am. As he closed her door, Daniel thought about Sarah, about the life they'd had and the love they'd shared. He didn't feel guilty anymore for moving forward. He felt grateful for the time they'd had, for Emma, for the capacity to love again. And he felt hopeful that maybe, just maybe, broken people could find each other and build something whole. The next morning brought fog so thick that Daniel couldn't see the ocean from his kitchen window. Emma sat at the table, drawing elaborate pictures of what she called the new family. Stick figures that were clearly meant to be the four of them, holding hands on a beach with a massive sun overhead. That's really good, Em, Daniel said, pouring coffee. It's our future, Emma said matter-of-factly. You and Miss Elena are going to get married, and we'll all live together. Sweetheart, We talked about this. Elena and I are just getting to know each other better. But you kissed her. Noah told me. Daniel nearly dropped his mug. Noah told you what? He saw you through the window last night when you left. He said you looked happy. Emma looked up from her drawing. Are you happy, Daddy? The question was so earnest, so full of hope, that Daniel had to sit down. Yeah, Em, I am. Good. She went back to her drawing, adding what looked like dolphins jumping in the background. Mom would be happy too. The observation hit Daniel squarely in the chest. You think so? I know so. She told me once that she didn't want you to be sad forever. I was only 5, but I remember. Daniel's throat tightened. Sarah had known she was dying when she'd said that to Emma, had tried to give their daughter permission to let him move on. He'd forgotten that conversation, or maybe he'd blocked it out, unable to process the generosity of a dying woman thinking about his future happiness. Your mom was pretty amazing, he managed. So is Miss Elena, Emma said. Different, but amazing. You're allowed to love them both, Daddy. Out of the mouths of 7-year-olds, Daniel thought. Sometimes children understood things adults spent years trying to figure out. His phone buzzed. Elena, coffee at my place? Noah wants to show Emma something. Daniel smiled. They were still maintaining the pretense that every meeting was about the kids, though they both knew better now. Be there in 20. When they arrived, Noah met them at the door with barely contained excitement. Emma, come see what washed up on the beach this morning. The children disappeared toward the back door while Elena appeared from the kitchen, her hair still damp from a shower, wearing a red t-shirt that made Daniel's pulse quicken. Red again, he observed. You noticed. I always notice. Elena smiled, a little shy, a little pleased. I used to avoid red. Victor said it made me look cheap, trying too hard for attention. She smoothed the shirt self-consciously. After I left, I bought everything red I could find, like reclaiming something he'd taken from me. It suits you, Daniel said. The color. And the reclaiming. She crossed to him, rising on her toes to kiss him quickly. It was becoming easier, more natural, these small moments of affection that felt both thrilling and comfortable. Coffee's ready, she said, and I made muffins. You made muffins? Don't sound so shocked. I'm capable of domesticity. I'm not shocked. I'm impressed. They settled at the kitchen table with coffee and surprisingly good blueberry muffins, watching through the window as Emma and Noah examined something on the beach, a large piece of driftwood shaped like a bird. They're good together, Elena said. The kids. They balance each other. Emma brings Noah out of his shell. Noah gives Emma someone to take care of. She likes taking care of people. Gets it from her mother. Daniel paused. Sarah was like that, always putting everyone else first. Elena was quiet for a moment. Do I remind you of her? Is that why? No, Daniel said firmly. You're nothing like Sarah. That's not a bad thing, Elena. It's just true. Sarah was sunshine, bright and warm and impossible not to love immediately. He searched for the right words. You're the ocean, beautiful and powerful and a little dangerous. You make people work to know you, but once they do, they can't imagine life without you. Elena's eyes had gone wide. That's the most romantic thing anyone's ever said to me. Victor never said anything romantic. He said I was pretty when he wanted sex and useful when I did what he wanted. That was the extent of his compliments. The casual way she said it made Daniel's anger flare again. He'd never met Victor Hale, but he hated him with the intensity of someone watching the person they cared about still bear the scars of old wounds. He was a fool, Daniel said. He was a lot of things. Fool is probably the kindest. Elena broke off a piece of muffin, not eating it. Daniel, there's something I need to tell you about why I left when I did. Her tone had changed, become heavier. Daniel set down his coffee and gave her his full attention. Okay. Victor was having an affair, probably multiple affairs. I knew, or at least suspected, for years. But the night I finally left, I came home from the grocery store and found him with a woman in our bed. Noah was at a friend's house, thank God. But Victor didn't even have the decency to look ashamed. He just told me this was my fault for being cold, for not giving him what he needed. Daniel reached across the table, taking her hand. I lost it, Elena continued, her voice shaking slightly. completely lost it, started screaming, throwing things. And Victor just sat there, calm as anything, and said if I didn't shut up and calm down, he'd call the police and have me arrested for assault. Then he'd take Noah and I'd never see him again. Jesus, Elena. That's when I realized how powerless I was. He'd been setting it up for years, isolating me from family, controlling our money, making me financially dependent on him. If I fought him in court, he had the resources to bury me. So I waited until he left on a business trip, packed what I could fit in 2 suitcases, withdrew the maximum from our joint account, and ran. Did you have family you could go to? My parents disowned me when I married Victor. They saw through him immediately, told me he was dangerous, begged me not to marry him. I didn't listen. By the time I realized they were right, too much time had passed, too much pride. Elena's voice cracked. I haven't spoken to them in almost 10 years. Have you thought about reaching out? Every day. But what do I say? You were right. I was wrong. Can you forgive me for wasting a decade of my life? You could start with, I miss you, Daniel suggested gently. Elena pulled her hand away, wrapping her arms around herself. I'm scared they won't want to hear from me, that they'll tell me it's too late. I made my choice. Or they might be thrilled to hear from you, relieved you're safe, desperate to meet their grandson. You don't know them. No, but I know parents, and most parents never stop loving their kids, even when they're angry or disappointed. Elena stood abruptly, walking to the window. Her shoulders were tense, defensive. Daniel recognized the signs. He was pushing too hard, too fast. I'm sorry, he said. I didn't mean to overstep. You didn't. She stopped, pressing her palms against the glass. I've spent 3 years building walls, Daniel. Safety in isolation. And you keep finding doors I didn't know I'd left unlocked. Do you want me to stop looking? She turned to face him, and there were tears on her cheeks. No. That's what terrifies me. I don't want you to stop. Daniel stood, crossing to her. He didn't touch her, just stood close enough that she could reach for him if she wanted to. Elena, you don't have to decide about your parents today, or tomorrow, or ever. I just don't want you to carry that regret if you don't have to. What if I reach out and they reject me? Don't think I could survive that. You've survived worse. Have I? She laughed bitterly. Some days I'm not sure. Some days I think I'm just going through the motions, pretending to be whole when I'm actually shattered into 1,000 pieces. Then I'll help you find the pieces, Daniel said simply, however long it takes. Elena looked at him for a long moment, something shifting in her expression. Then she stepped forward and wrapped her arms around him, pressing her face against his chest. Daniel held her while she cried, quiet, shaking tears that felt like years of accumulated grief finally finding release. Outside, Emma and Noah had moved further down the beach, still examining their driftwood treasure. The fog was starting to lift, revealing patches of blue sky. I'm a mess, Elena said against his shirt. You're healing. There's a difference. Is there? Yeah. A mess is random. Healing is directional. She pulled back enough to look up at him. You always have an answer. Not always, but I'm good at faking it. That earned a watery laugh. She wiped her eyes, composing herself. Sorry, I didn't mean to fall apart. You didn't fall apart. You let yourself feel something. That's brave. It doesn't feel brave. The bravest things never do. Elena kissed him then, salt from her tears mixing with the sweetness of blueberries, and Daniel thought that this messy, complicated, beautiful process of 2 broken people learning to be whole together was worth every risk. The moment was interrupted by the back door slamming open and Noah's voice calling urgently, Mom! Mom, come quick! They broke apart, Elena's face shifting immediately to concern as they rushed outside. Noah and Emma stood at the water's edge, pointing at something in the surf. There's a seal, Emma said excitedly. It's just sitting there. Sure enough, a young harbor seal bobbed in the shallow water, watching them with dark, curious eyes. It didn't seem distressed, just interested in the humans on the beach. Is it okay? Noah asked, his face anxious. Should we call someone? Elena crouched beside him. It looks healthy, probably just resting. Seals do that sometimes, come up on the beach to warm up. But what if it needs help? Then we'll help it. But for now, let's just watch and make sure it's breathing well and moving normally. They stood together, the four of them in a line, watching the seal. After a few minutes, it dove under a wave and disappeared. Gone, Emma said, disappointed. But we got to see it, Noah pointed out. That's pretty cool. Emma brightened. Yeah. Can we tell everyone at school? School doesn't start for 2 more weeks, Noah reminded her. Then we'll tell them when it does. As the children ran off to look for more treasures, Elena slipped her hand into Daniel's. Thank you, she said quietly. For what? For being here. For not running when I showed you how broken I am. Elena, you keep saying you're broken, but from where I'm standing, you look pretty whole to me. She squeezed his hand. You might need glasses, or you might need to see yourself the way I see you. Before Elena could respond, her phone rang. She pulled it from her pocket, glanced at the screen, and went completely still. The color drained from her face. What is it? Daniel asked. Unknown number. Her hand was shaking. It's probably nothing. Spam call. But her fear suggested she thought it was something far more serious. Daniel watched as she declined the call, then immediately turned off her phone. Elena, it's nothing, she said too quickly. Just careful. I always am with unknown numbers. She was lying, or at least not telling the whole truth. Daniel could see it in the tension that had returned to her shoulders, the way her eyes had gone distant and watchful. Has Victor tried to contact you before? No, never. He doesn't have this number, doesn't know where we are. She said it like a mantra, like if she repeated it enough, it would be true. I'm just paranoid. Paranoia kept you and Noah safe. That's not a bad thing. Elena nodded, but she looked shaken. The easy happiness from moments before had evaporated, replaced by the guarded wariness Daniel had seen in their first meeting. I should get Noah home, she said. We have some errands to run. It was an obvious deflection, but Daniel didn't push. Okay, Emma and I can take off. Daniel, I'm sorry. I'm not trying to shut you out. I know, but I'm here if you need me, anytime. Elena nodded, already calling Noah back from the beach. As Daniel and Emma walked home, Emma tugged on his hand. Miss Elena got scared, she observed. Yeah, she did. Why? Sometimes grown-ups have things that scare them, things from before that won't quite let go. Emma processed this seriously. Like how you get sad sometimes when you look at pictures of Mom? Exactly like that. But you're getting less sad, Emma said, because of Miss Elena. She helps, Daniel admitted. Then we should help her too, with whatever makes her scared. Daniel pulled Emma close. You're pretty wise, you know that? I know, Emma said, making him laugh despite the worry starting to knot in his chest. That evening, Daniel texted Elena. You okay? The response took 20 minutes. Yes. Sorry about earlier, just got spooked. Want to talk about it? Not really. But thank you for asking. I'm here if you change your mind. I know. That means everything. Daniel stared at his phone, wanting to push but knowing better. Elena would open up when she was ready. Forcing it would only make her retreat further. But 3 days later, when he hadn't heard from her beyond brief surface-level texts, Daniel decided that giving space was one thing. Letting her disappear into fear was another. He knocked on her door at 8 in the morning. Elena answered in pajamas, her hair unbrushed, dark circles under her eyes. Daniel, what are you doing here? Checking on you, you've been quiet. I'm fine. You're clearly not. Elena's jaw tightened. I said I'm fine. Please don't push this. Elena, I'm not pushing. I'm worried. You got a phone call and you've been pulling away ever since. That's not... I'm just busy. Lots of work deadlines. At 8 in the morning on a Saturday? She started to close the door. Daniel caught it, not forcefully, but firmly. Talk to me, he said, please. Whatever's going on, you don't have to face it alone. Yes, I do, Elena said, and her voice cracked. That's how I stay safe. That's how I keep Noah safe. Alone. That's how you stay scared, Daniel countered. There's a difference. Elena's eyes filled with tears. You don't understand. If Victor found us, did he? Was that him on the phone? I don't know. The number was blocked. It rang 3 times and stopped, then again 2 hours later, and again yesterday. Same pattern, 3 rings, then nothing. That could be anything, wrong number, robocall, or Victor testing to see if the number's active before he makes contact. That's exactly the kind of game he'd play. Psychological warfare before the actual attack. Daniel could see the panic taking hold, the way fear was overriding reason. He kept his voice calm, steady. Okay, let's say it was him. What's the worst case scenario? He shows up here, demands to see Noah, files for custody, takes him away from me. The words came out in a rush, each one laced with terror. Elena, he gave up custody rights. You said so yourself. He can file to have them reinstated, claim I'm unstable, unfit. With his money, his lawyers, Daniel, I have nothing. No family support, no real documentation of his abuse. It was all psychological, emotional. How do I prove that in court? You have 3 years of stable employment, a safe home, Noah's school records showing he's healthy and happy. That counts for something. It counts for nothing against $40 million, and a man who's convinced every person he's ever met that he's charming and successful while I'm the crazy ex-wife. The bitterness in her voice was corrosive. Daniel wanted to argue, to reassure her, but he could see that logic wasn't going to penetrate the fear. What do you need? He asked instead. Right now, what would make you feel safer? Elena wiped her eyes roughly. I need you to take Emma and leave. Create distance. If Victor is watching, if he's digging into my life, I can't have you connected to us. He'll use you as leverage. He'll hurt you to hurt me. Elena, I'm not leaving you. Daniel, please. She was begging now, desperate. I can't have another person I care about get destroyed because of me. My parents, my old friends, everyone who got close to Victor got burned. I won't do that to you and Emma. That was Victor's doing, not yours. It doesn't matter whose fault it is. The result is the same. Her voice rose, sharp with panic. Please, just go. Forget about me. Find someone simple. Someone without a psychopath ex-husband who might show up and ruin everything. Daniel stepped inside, closing the door behind him despite Elena's protests. He took her by the shoulders, gently but firmly, making her look at him. I'm not going anywhere, he said. You can push me away. You can try to protect me, but I'm not leaving. You hear me? I'm not him. I'm not Victor, and I don't abandon people I care about just because things get complicated. You should, Elena whispered. You really should. Well, I don't. So you're stuck with me. She sagged against him, all the fight draining out of her. I'm so scared, Daniel, all the time. I thought I was getting better, building a real life, but one phone call and I'm right back there, powerless and terrified. Where's Noah? Still asleep. Okay, here's what we're going to do. You're going to get dressed. I'm going to make you breakfast. Then we're going to sit down and make an actual plan for if, and that's a big if, Victor shows up. Not a panic plan, a real one. What kind of plan? The kind that involves lawyers and documentation and witnesses. The kind that gives you actual power instead of just fear. Elena pulled back to look at him. You'd help me with that? Of course I would. Elena, I'm in this. Whatever this becomes, however complicated it gets, I'm in. You need to believe that. She searched his face for a long moment, looking for doubt or hesitation. When she didn't find any, something in her expression cracked open. Okay, she said quietly. Okay. While Elena showered and dressed, Daniel made pancakes and coffee. Noah appeared halfway through, rubbing his eyes. Mr. Daniel, what are you doing here? Making breakfast. Your mom needed some help this morning. Is she okay? Noah's face creased with worry. She's been really quiet the last few days. She's okay, just dealing with some grown-up stuff. Noah sat at the table watching Daniel cook with serious eyes. Is it about my dad? The question surprised Daniel. What makes you ask that? Mom always gets like this when she thinks about him, quiet and scared. I hate it. Daniel flipped a pancake, choosing his words carefully. Your mom's dealing with some worries, but she's strong, and she has people who care about her. That helps. Do you care about her? Noah asked directly. Yes, very much. Good. She needs somebody who's not me to care about her. It's too much sometimes being the only one. The maturity of the statement hurt Daniel's heart. 9 years old, and Noah already understood the weight his mother carried, the isolation she'd chosen to keep him safe. "You're not the only one anymore," Daniel said. "I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere." Noah nodded solemnly. "Thanks." When Elena emerged, dressed and composed but still pale, she found Daniel and Noah eating pancakes and discussing marine biology. The normalcy of it seemed to steady her. "Saved you some," Daniel said, gesturing to a plate. Elena sat, and for a while they just existed together, eating breakfast, talking about small things, creating a bubble of ordinary life around the fear trying to intrude. After Noah finished and went to his room, Elena looked at Daniel across the table. "I'm sorry for freaking out." "Don't be. You're dealing with real trauma. That's not something you just logic away." "But I can't keep letting it control me. Every unknown number can't send me into a spiral. So let's take away some of the unknown. Do you have a lawyer? Someone who handled your divorce?" "A court-appointed mediator. Victor's lawyer did most of the actual work since I couldn't afford one." "Okay. First step. We find you a good family law attorney. Someone who specializes in custody cases and high-conflict situations." "I can't afford—" "Then we figure it out. Payment plans, pro bono work, something. Elena, you can't fight a potential custody battle without legal representation. You make it sound so simple." "It's not simple, but it's necessary." Daniel paused. "And I'll help however I can. Financially, if you'll let me, or just logistically, researching lawyers, making calls, whatever you need." Elena's eyes filled with tears again. "Why would you do that?" "Because I care about you and Noah. Because nobody should have to face their demons alone. Because—" He stopped, realizing what he was about to say. "Because what?" Elena prompted softly. "Because I'm falling in love with you," Daniel said. "And when you love someone, you show up, even when it's hard." The words hung in the air between them, huge and terrifying and true. Elena's breath caught, her expression shifting through shock and fear, and something that looked like desperate hope. "Daniel, you don't have to say it back. I'm not asking you to. I just need you to know that this isn't casual for me. You're not casual for me." Elena stood abruptly, walking to him. She pulled him up from his chair and kissed him hard, her hands fisting in his shirt, tears streaming down her face. When she pulled back, she said, "I'm falling in love with you too. And it terrifies me because everyone I've ever loved has either died or destroyed me. I'm not going to do either of those things." "You can't promise that." "No," Daniel agreed, "but I can promise I'll try my absolute hardest not to. That enough?" Elena laughed through her tears. "It has to be." They spent the rest of the morning researching family law attorneys in the area. Daniel made calls while Elena worked, and by early afternoon they had 3 consultations scheduled for the following week. "This feels productive," Elena said. "Less powerless." "That's the goal." She looked at him from across her small living room, and the gratitude in her expression made Daniel's chest ache. "Thank you," she said, "for not letting me push you away. Thank you for letting me stay." That evening, they told the children, not everything, not about the phone calls or the fear of Victor returning, but the important part. "Emma, Noah," Daniel said as they sat together on Elena's porch watching the sunset, "you both know that your mom and I have been spending a lot of time together." "Because you're in love," Emma said matter-of-factly. Elena choked on her water. "What?" "You hold hands and you smile at each other a lot, and you kiss when you think we're not looking," Emma continued. "That's what people do when they're in love." Noah nodded. "I told Emma 2 weeks ago. We've been waiting for you to tell us officially." Daniel and Elena looked at each other, then started laughing. "Well," Elena said, "I guess that makes this easier. Yes, your dad and I are together. We care about each other. We love each other," Emma corrected. "Right?" Daniel squeezed Elena's hand. "Right." "So we're a family now?" Noah asked, his voice carefully neutral, like he was afraid to hope. "We're becoming one," Elena said carefully. "It takes time to blend families together. But yes, that's the direction we're heading." "Good," Noah said and smiled, a real, genuine smile that transformed his serious face. "I like it." "Me too," Emma said. She looked at Daniel. "Daddy, does this mean Miss Elena is going to be my new mom?" The question made Elena freeze. Daniel could feel the panic radiating off her. No, he said gently. Elena is Elena. She's not replacing your mom, Em. Nobody could ever do that, but she can be someone important in your life. Someone who cares about you. Like a bonus mom, Emma suggested. Elena's eyes filled with tears. I'd like that. If you'd like that. I would, Emma said, and climbed into Elena's lap, hugging her fiercely. Over Emma's head, Elena met Daniel's eyes, and in them he saw fear and hope and love all tangled together. They were building something fragile and beautiful, and the shadow of Victor Hale hung over it like a storm cloud. But for now, in this moment, with their children happy and the sunset painting the sky gold and orange, they had something worth protecting. They had each other. And Daniel was determined that would be enough. The storm arrived 3 weeks later, not as a phone call, but as a man in an expensive suit standing on Elena's porch at 7 in the morning. Daniel was there. He'd started staying over some nights after the children were asleep, leaving before they woke. When the doorbell rang, Elena went rigid in his arms, that animal awareness of danger that came from years of survival. Stay here, she whispered, pulling on a robe. But Daniel followed her to the door, standing just behind her when she opened it to find a stranger who somehow wasn't a stranger at all. Daniel recognized him instantly from Elena's fear, the way she'd gone pale, the way her hands had started shaking. The man was tall, impeccably dressed, with silver at his temples and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He looked at Elena like she was a possession he'd temporarily misplaced. Hello, Claire, he said. Claire, not Elena. Daniel filed that away. What are you doing here, Victor? Elena's voice was steady, but Daniel could see her fingernails digging into the doorframe. I came to see my son. Victor's gaze slid past her to Daniel, dismissive and calculating. And apparently to meet your new friend. Noah doesn't want to see you. You gave up custody. You have no rights here. Rights can be renegotiated, especially when a mother is deemed unfit. Victor pulled a folder from his briefcase. I've been doing some research, Claire. You changed your name illegally. The paperwork was never properly filed. You're using a false identity. That's fraud. The name change was legal, Elena said, but her voice wavered. Was it? Because my lawyers seem to think otherwise. They also think a judge might be very interested to hear about the unstable woman who kidnapped a child and disappeared in the middle of the night. He smiled. That's how this will be framed, you understand? Not as a mother escaping, but as a disturbed woman stealing a child from his father. Daniel stepped forward. You need to leave. Now. Victor's attention focused on him fully for the first time. And you are? Someone telling you to leave her property. Interesting. Does this someone know about Claire's history, her mental health struggles, the medications she was on? I was on antidepressants because living with you was slowly killing me, Elena said, finding her voice. That's not a mental health struggle. That's a survival response. That's not how my doctors will testify. Victor tucked the folder back into his briefcase. Here's what's going to happen. I'm filing for full custody of Noah. Given your history of instability, your illegal name change, and your current living situation, shacking up with a stranger while my son is in the house, I'd say I have an excellent case. You don't want Noah, Elena said. You never did. This is just about controlling me. Maybe. Or maybe I've realized that leaving my son with an unstable woman was a mistake. Victor's smile widened. The hearing is in 2 weeks. I suggest you get a lawyer, though I doubt it will help. Oh, and Claire, if you run again, I will find you, and next time the police will be involved. He turned and walked to a black Mercedes parked at the curb. Elena stood frozen until the car pulled away, then her legs gave out. Daniel caught her, lowering them both to the porch floor. He found us, she whispered. He actually found us. How did he know where you were? I don't know. I was so careful. I changed everything. Email, phone number, social media. I paid cash for the first 6 months. How did he find us? Daniel's mind was racing. The unknown calls. He was checking if the number was active before he made contact. But how did he get the number? Nobody has it except... Elena's eyes widened with horror. Noah's school. For emergencies. They have my number listed. Could Victor access those records? With enough money, he could access anything. Elena was shaking violently now. He's going to take Noah. He's going to win because he always wins, and I'm going to lose my son. Elena, look at me. Daniel took her face in his hands. We fight this with everything we have. You're not alone this time. You heard him. He'll make me look unstable. The name change, the running, the antidepressants, he'll twist all of it. Then we tell the truth. All of it. Why you ran, what he did, why you changed your name. Truth doesn't matter in court, Daniel. Money does. And Victor has all the money in the world. She was spiraling, panic overriding reason. Daniel pulled her close, letting her cry against his chest while his own mind worked through the problem. They needed a lawyer, and not just any lawyer, someone who specialized in cases like this, who dealt with wealthy, manipulative opponents before. Inside the house, Daniel could hear Noah moving around. Getting ready for school like this was a normal morning, unaware that his world was about to be upended. We need to tell Noah, Daniel said gently. How do I tell him his father wants to take him away? How do I explain that without terrifying him? With the truth. That his dad is asking to see him, that there's going to be a court hearing, but that you're going to fight for him. Elena pulled back, wiping her eyes. He's going to be so scared. Probably, but he's also tough. He gets that from you. They told Noah over breakfast. Daniel stayed, holding Elena's hand under the table while she explained in the gentlest terms possible that Victor had found them and was asking for custody. Noah's face went through several expressions: shock, fear, and then something harder: anger. I don't want to see him, Noah said flatly. I don't want to live with him. I want to stay here with you. I know, baby, and I'm going to fight for that. But there's going to be a court hearing where a judge decides. Then I'll tell the judge I want to stay with you. That's allowed, right? Kids get to say what they want? Elena's eyes filled with tears. Sometimes, depending on the judge, and then I'll tell them everything. About how Dad used to yell at you, about how he made you cry, about how I was always scared when he was home. Noah's voice was shaking but determined. He can't just show up and take me because he feels like it. Daniel felt something fierce and protective surge in his chest. This 9-year-old boy, who'd spent his early childhood in a house filled with tension and fear, was ready to fight for his mother. Noah, Daniel said quietly, that's very brave. And if it comes to it, your testimony will matter, but it might be hard. The lawyers might ask you difficult questions. I don't care. I'm not going with him. Noah looked at Elena. I won't, Mom, no matter what they say. Elena couldn't speak, could only pull Noah into her arms and hold him while she cried. After Daniel dropped Noah at school, Emma staying home with Elena, who was in no state to be alone, he made calls. The first attorney they'd scheduled a consultation with agreed to see Elena immediately. By noon, they were sitting in a small office across from Margaret Chen, a family law attorney in her 50s with sharp eyes and a reputation for handling high-conflict custody cases. Elena told her story haltingly, stopping frequently to compose herself. Daniel held her hand, offering silent support. Margaret took notes, asking pointed questions about documentation, witnesses, Victor's behavior during the marriage. When Elena finished, Margaret sat back, her expression thoughtful. This is going to be difficult, she said bluntly. Victor has resources and he's clearly been planning this. The name change issue is problematic. Even if it was technically legal, he'll use it to paint you as unstable and deceptive. So I'm going to lose, Elena said flatly. I didn't say that. I said it will be difficult. But you have advantages too. 3 years of stable employment and housing. Noah's school records showing he's thriving. No police record, no CPS involvement, and most importantly, Noah's age and wishes. Will the judge listen to him? In Washington state, a 9-year-old's preference carries weight, especially if he can articulate clear reasons. The question is whether Victor's lawyers can undermine his testimony. How would they do that? Daniel asked. By suggesting Noah's been coached by his mother, that he's repeating things Elena has told him rather than expressing genuine feelings. Margaret looked at Elena. Did you talk negatively about Victor in front of Noah? I tried not to, but he saw and heard things. He knew I was afraid. I couldn't hide that completely. That's actually good. It means his testimony will be based on his own observations, not just your account. Margaret pulled out a legal pad. Here's what we need to do. First, we document everything. Every instance of Victor's controlling behavior, emotional abuse, manipulation. Do you have emails, texts, anything in writing? Some emails. I saved them when I left on a flash drive. I was too scared to keep them on my computer. Good. We'll need those. Second, we need witnesses who can testify to your state of mind during the marriage and after. Friends, family, coworkers who saw what was happening. Elena's face fell. I don't have anyone. Victor isolated me from friends. My family cut me off when I married him. I have no one. What about medical records? You mentioned antidepressants. Did you see a therapist? Twice. Victor found out and forbade me from going back. Said therapy was for weak people who couldn't handle their own problems. Margaret made a note. We can subpoena those therapy records if needed. What about after you left? Any documentation of your recovery, your stability? I've been working steadily for 3 years. Same job, same client base. Noah's been in the same school, same pediatrician. I can get records for all of that. Excellent. That shows stability and commitment to Noah's well-being. Margaret looked at Daniel. What's your role in this? I'm Elena's partner. We've been together for about 3 months. And you're willing to testify if needed? Absolutely. Good. Your testimony about Elena's character and her relationship with Noah will help, especially if you can speak to the difference between her behavior now versus what she's described from her marriage. Margaret turned back to Elena. Now, the hard question. What's the worst thing Victor could bring up about you? Anything that could be used against you? Elena was quiet for a long moment. I tried to kill myself once. 7 years ago, before Noah was born. I took pills. Victor found me and took me to the hospital. They pumped my stomach and sent me home with a prescription and a referral to a psychiatrist that Victor never let me follow up on. The words hit the room like stones. Daniel's hand tightened on Elena's, anger and heartbreak flooding through him. Margaret's expression didn't change. Was there a police report? Hospital documentation? Probably hospital documentation. I don't know about police. Victor's lawyers will almost certainly find that and use it. They'll argue you're unstable, a danger to yourself and potentially to Noah. But that was 7 years ago, Daniel protested. Before Noah was even born. She's been completely stable since then. Logic doesn't always win in court, Mr. Hayes. Emotion does. And the image of a mother who once attempted suicide is powerful, regardless of context. Margaret looked at Elena. We need to get ahead of this. Control the narrative. Why did you try to kill yourself? Elena's voice was barely audible. Because Victor told me I was worthless. Because he'd been having an affair and told me it was my fault for being broken. Because I couldn't see any way out. She swallowed hard. I was young and stupid, and I thought dying was easier than leaving. But you didn't die. You survived, and more than that, you eventually found the strength to leave. That's the narrative we use, not a mentally ill woman, but a survivor who overcame an abusive situation and built a good life for her son. Will that be enough? Honestly, I don't know, but it's what we have, and we're going to fight with everything we've got. Margaret pulled out a contract. My retainer is $5,000. My hourly rate is $350. A custody case like this could easily run $20,000 to $30,000 by the time we're done. Elena's face went white. I don't have that kind of money. I figured. I'm willing to work out a payment plan. And if we can prove Victor's abuse, there's a chance we can get him to pay your legal fees as part of the settlement. I'll help, Daniel said immediately. Whatever Elena can't cover, I will. Elena turned to him. Daniel, no, that's too much. This isn't your fight. It is if it's yours. Margaret watched this exchange with interest. Mr. Hayes, are you aware of what you're signing up for? Victor will go after you too. He'll dig into your past, your finances, your relationship with your daughter. He'll try to make you look like an opportunist taking advantage of a vulnerable woman. Let him try, Daniel said. I know who I am, and I know Elena's worth fighting for. Margaret smiled for the first time. Good. You're going to need that conviction. She looked at Elena. Ms. Voss, I'm going to be honest with you. This case isn't a sure thing. Victor has advantages. But you have something he doesn't. A genuine relationship with your son and a clear history of putting his needs first. That matters. And I'm going to make sure the judge sees it. Elena signed the contract with shaking hands. When they left the office, she was quiet, processing everything. Daniel drove her home in silence, giving her space to think. But when they pulled up to her cottage, Elena finally spoke. "You don't have to do this. Pay for my lawyer, testify, get dragged into my mess. You could walk away right now, and I wouldn't blame you." Daniel turned off the engine and looked at her. "Is that what you want?" "No. But it's what you should want. This is going to get ugly, Daniel. Victor will destroy anyone who stands with me. That's what he does. Then he's going to have to destroy me too, because I'm not walking away." Elena's eyes filled with tears. "Why? Why would you risk everything for someone you've only known a few months?" "Because in those few months, you've become one of the most important people in my life. Because I love you. Because Noah deserves a mother who fought for him, and you deserve someone who fights with you." Daniel reached for her hand. "Elena, I've already lost one person I loved. I'm not going to lose another without a fight." She kissed him then, desperate and grateful and scared, and Daniel held her like he could shield her from what was coming. Inside, Emma was teaching Noah how to make friendship bracelets. Both children bent over colorful string, their faces serious with concentration. They looked up when Daniel and Elena entered, and Daniel saw the question in Noah's eyes. "We have a lawyer," Elena said. "A good one. And we're going to fight this." "Good," Noah said simply, and went back to his bracelet. The next 2 weeks were a blur of preparation. Margaret worked with Elena to compile documentation, emails Victor had sent during their marriage, medical records, Noah's school reports, character references from Elena's employers and Noah's teachers. Daniel gave a deposition describing Elena's relationship with Noah, her stability, the home environment she'd created. Victor's lawyers sent their own barrage of documents: the suicide attempt, the name change paperwork with supposed irregularities, statements from Victor's colleagues describing him as a devoted father who'd been devastated when his wife left with their son. They painted Elena as unstable, manipulative, a woman who'd stolen a child out of spite. Noah was deposed too. Margaret prepared him carefully, explaining that the lawyers would try to trick him, would ask confusing questions, would try to make him say things he didn't mean. Noah sat through 2 hours of questioning with remarkable composure, never wavering from his account. That he was happy with his mother, that he didn't want to live with Victor, that he remembered being scared when his parents fought. Victor's lawyer tried to suggest Elena had coached him. Noah's response was simple and devastating. "Nobody had to tell me to be scared of my dad. I just was." 3 days before the hearing, Margaret called with news. Victor's offering a settlement. He'll drop the custody claim in exchange for visitation rights, 1 weekend a month and 2 weeks in summer. "Absolutely not," Elena said immediately. "I don't want him anywhere near Noah." "Elena, supervised visitation might be the best we can hope for. If we go to trial and lose, we appeal. We keep fighting. But I'm not agreeing to put Noah in a room with Victor voluntarily." Margaret was quiet for a moment. "You understand this is risky." "Very risky." "I understand. But Victor doesn't actually want custody. He wants control. And the minute I give him visitation, he'll use it as a wedge to take more. I know how he operates." "All right, we go to trial. But Elena, you need to prepare yourself for the possibility that we might lose." "I know." Elena's voice was steady. "But at least I'll know I fought." The night before the hearing, Daniel stayed over. They put both children to bed early, then sat together on Elena's porch watching the ocean, neither of them speaking much. There wasn't much left to say. Everything had been said, documented, argued. Tomorrow would bring what it brought. "I'm terrified," Elena finally said. "Me too." "What if I lose him, Daniel? What if the judge gives Victor custody? Then we appeal, and we keep fighting until we win." "And if we don't?" Daniel didn't have an answer for that. The possibility was too devastating to contemplate. Elena leaned her head on his shoulder. "Thank you for staying, for all of it." "Where else would I be?" "Somewhere safe, somewhere simple, with someone who doesn't come with all this damage." "I don't want simple. I want you." She turned to kiss him, and it was different from their other kisses, slower, deeper, weighted with the knowledge that everything might change tomorrow. When they finally went to bed, they held each other in the darkness, neither sleeping much, both dreading sunrise. The alarm went off at 6. Elena dressed carefully in a navy suit Margaret had helped her pick out. Professional, conservative, motherly. She looked at herself in the mirror and Daniel saw her armor going up, the same way it had been when they first met. Protection against a world that had hurt her too many times. "You ready?" he asked. "No, but let's go anyway." They dropped Emma with a neighbor who'd volunteered to watch her, then drove to the courthouse with Noah in the back seat, quiet and pale. Margaret met them outside, briefcase in hand, her expression professionally neutral. "Victor's already here. He brought his new girlfriend." Elena's face went white. "He what?" "Young blonde, early 20s. His lawyers are using her to demonstrate he has a stable home environment for Noah." Margaret's voice was tight with anger. "It's a calculated move, shows he's moved on and is ready to be a family man." "He's using her," Elena said flatly, "just like he used me." "Probably. But she'll testify that Victor is wonderful with children, that he talks about Noah constantly, that he's heartbroken over being separated from his son." "It's all lies." "I know, but we still have to counter it." They walked into the courthouse together, Daniel's hand on Elena's back, Noah between them. And there, in the hallway outside the courtroom, was Victor Hale with a pretty young woman on his arm, looking every inch the successful businessman and devoted father. He smiled when he saw Elena, that same cold, calculating smile that said he'd already won. Noah pressed closer to Elena, his hand finding hers. Elena squeezed it, her jaw set with determination. "Let's go," she said to Margaret. "Let's fight." They walked into the courtroom, and the door closed behind them with the finality of a cell door slamming shut. The battle for Noah's future was about to begin. The courtroom was smaller than Daniel had expected, wood-paneled and formal, with fluorescent lights that made everything look slightly harsh. Judge Patricia Morrison presided from the bench, a woman in her 60s with steel-gray hair and an expression that gave nothing away. She looked at the assembled parties with the weariness of someone who'd seen too many families destroy each other in the name of love. Victor sat at the plaintiff's table with 3 lawyers, all in expensive suits, all projecting confidence. His girlfriend, Ashley, Daniel heard her called, sat in the gallery behind him, blonde and polished and young enough to be his daughter. Victor had his hand on the table, wedding ring conspicuously absent, replaced by a simple gold band that suggested he'd moved on, found happiness, become a different man. Elena sat beside Margaret at the defense table, her spine rigid, her hands folded so tightly her knuckles were white. Daniel sat behind them with Noah, who was dressed in khakis and a button-down shirt, looking far too small and serious for his age. Victor's lead attorney, a man named Richard Brennan with silver hair and a voice like honey over gravel, stood first. "Your Honor, we're here today because a father who loves his son desperately has been denied access to him for 3 years. My client, Mr. Victor Hale, made the difficult decision to grant his ex-wife primary custody after their divorce, believing it was in Noah's best interest to have stability with his mother. But recent information has come to light suggesting that Ms. Voss, or Claire Mitchell, as she was known during the marriage, is not the stable presence we believed her to be." Brennan laid out his case methodically. The suicide attempt 7 years ago, the antidepressants, the name change that he characterized as legally dubious and psychologically concerning, the midnight flight from their home with Noah, taken without Victor's knowledge or consent. He painted a picture of an unstable woman, prone to impulsive decisions, who'd isolated Noah from his father, not out of genuine concern, but out of spite and vindictiveness. "Mr. Hale is a successful businessman, Your Honor, with the resources to provide Noah with every advantage, the best schools, the best opportunities, a stable 2-parent household." Brennan gestured toward Ashley. "He's moved on from the pain of his divorce and built a new life. All he wants is the chance to be a father to his son." When Brennan sat down, Margaret stood. She was smaller than Victor's lawyers, less polished, but there was steel in her voice. "Your Honor, what Mr. Brennan has presented is a carefully constructed fiction. Yes, Ms. Voss changed her name, legally and with proper documentation, despite Mr. Brennan's suggestions otherwise. Yes, she left in the middle of the night, but she didn't leave because she was vindictive or unstable. She left because she was terrified." Margaret presented Elena's case piece by piece. The emails Victor had sent during their marriage, cold and controlling, dictating what Elena could wear, who she could see, how she should spend her time. The medical records from the suicide attempt, showing Elena had been hospitalized after an overdose that occurred following a particularly brutal argument with Victor. The testimony from Noah's teachers describing a happy, well-adjusted child who showed no signs of neglect or instability in his home life. Mintons, Voss has built a stable life for her son, Your Honor. She has steady employment, a safe home, and most importantly, a genuine, loving relationship with Noah. Mr. Hale, on the other hand, voluntarily relinquished custody 3 years ago and has made no effort to contact Noah until now. This isn't about a father's love. This is about control. The first witness was Victor himself. Brennan led him through his testimony with practiced ease. Victor described his marriage to Elena as troubled from the start, characterized by Elena's mood swings and irrational behavior. He claimed he'd tried to get her help, but she'd refused. He spoke about the pain of signing away custody, saying he'd believed it was what Elena needed to feel secure, but that he'd regretted it every day since. "I miss my son," Victor said, and his voice actually cracked slightly. "I think about him constantly. All I want is a chance to be part of his life again." It was a masterful performance. Daniel could see the judge watching Victor carefully, her expression thoughtful. When Margaret stood to cross-examine, Victor's demeanor shifted subtly. The grief fell away, replaced by something cooler, more calculated. "Mr. Hale, you said you've missed Noah for 3 years. Can you tell me the last birthday gift you sent him?" Victor blinked. I don't have his address. Elena made sure of that." "But you found the address to serve her with custody papers. Why didn't you send a birthday card?" "I was respecting the boundaries of the custody agreement." "The custody agreement that you're now claiming was a mistake? That you regretted immediately?" Margaret's voice was sharp. "Which is it, Mr. Hale? Were you respecting Elena's boundaries, or were you devastated at being separated from your son?" "Both can be true." "Can they? Let's talk about the 3 years before the divorce. How many of Noah's parent-teacher conferences did you attend?" Victor hesitated. "I'm not sure." "Several. According to school records, you attended 0. How many of his soccer games?" "My work schedule was demanding." 0, according to the team roster sign-ins. How many times did you put Noah to bed, read him a story, help him with homework?" "I worked long hours to provide for my family." "That's not an answer, Mr. Hale. The truth is you had very little involvement in Noah's daily life during your marriage, did you?" "I was the breadwinner. Elena handled the domestic responsibilities." "Because you wanted her to, or because you insisted she do nothing else?" Margaret pulled out an email. "This is from you to Elena, dated 4 years ago. I'll read the relevant portion. Your job is to take care of Noah and the house. My job is to make the money. Don't confuse your role with mine." "Does that sound like a partnership?" Victor's jaw tightened. "Taken out of context. What context makes that acceptable, Mr. Hale?" Margaret moved closer. "Let's talk about the night Elena left. You testified that you came home and found her and Noah gone. But you didn't report it to the police, did you? Didn't file a missing persons report. Why not, if you were so concerned?" "I knew she'd left voluntarily." "How did you know that?" "She'd threatened to leave before." "When?" Victor realized his mistake too late. "I don't recall specific dates." "But you recall that she threatened to leave. What prompted those threats, Mr. Hale? What was happening that made your wife want to take your son and disappear?" "We had arguments. All couples do." "Did all couples have arguments that ended with one partner attempting suicide?" Margaret's voice was cold. "You found Elena after she'd taken pills 7 years ago. What did you do?" "I took her to the hospital. And after she was released, did you make sure she got the psychiatric help the hospital recommended?" "I suggested therapy." "She refused." "That's interesting because we have Elena's journal from that time period in which she writes, and I quote, 'V says therapy is for weak people, that if I really loved him, I'd be strong enough to be happy.' Does that sound like suggesting therapy?" "I don't recall saying that." No? What about this email, sent 2 days after Elena's hospital stay? "I've canceled the appointment with Dr. Reeves. We don't need a stranger poking around in our private business. You just need to try harder." Is that your email, Mr. Hale? Victor's composure was cracking. Elena was fragile. I was trying to protect our privacy. Or control the narrative? Margaret turned to the judge. Your Honor, Mr. Hale has presented himself as a devoted father desperate to reconnect with his son. But the evidence shows a man who had minimal involvement in Noah's life during the marriage, who controlled and isolated his wife, and who only developed interest in custody when he learned Elena had built a happy life without him. This isn't about Noah's welfare. This is about winning. When Victor stepped down, his face was tight with barely suppressed anger. He looked at Elena with such cold fury that Daniel instinctively moved closer to the railing separating them. The next witness was Ashley, Victor's girlfriend. She testified about what a wonderful man Victor was, how he talked about Noah constantly, how excited he was at the prospect of being a father again. But under Margaret's cross-examination, cracks appeared. How long have you known Mr. Hale, Ms. Foster? 4 months. And in those 4 months, how many times has he mentioned wanting to see Noah before filing for custody? Ashley hesitated. I'm not sure. Never. Isn't that right? In fact, you didn't know he had a son until after he'd already filed the custody motion. He was protecting me from the situation, or he hadn't decided to pursue custody yet. Ms. Foster, are you aware that Mr. Hale was married when you first met him? The courtroom went very still. Ashley's face flushed. No. He told me he was divorced. He was still legally married to his second wife, actually. The divorce was finalized 3 months ago. Does Mr. Hale have a pattern of overlapping relationships? Brennan objected, and the judge sustained it, but the damage was done. Ashley looked shaken, confused, like she was seeing Victor clearly for the first time. Then it was Elena's turn. She walked to the witness stand with her head high, and Daniel could see her hands trembling as she was sworn in. Margaret led her through her testimony gently. The early days of her marriage, when Victor had been charming and attentive. The gradual shift to control and isolation. The suicide attempt and its aftermath. The years of walking on eggshells, never knowing what would set Victor off. Why did you leave, Ms. Voss? Because I realized that if I stayed, I would eventually die. Maybe by my own hand again. Maybe just from the slow erosion of being told I was worthless every day. And I couldn't let Noah grow up thinking that was what love looked like. Why did you change your name? Because I wanted to be someone new. Someone Victor hadn't destroyed. Claire Mitchell was broken and scared. Elena Voss is strong. Do you believe you're a good mother? Elena's voice was steady. I believe I'm doing my best. I work hard, I provide a safe home, and I love Noah more than anything in this world. That's all I can offer, my best. When Brennan stood to cross-examine, his approach was brutal. He went after the suicide attempt, the name change, the decision to leave without telling Victor where they were going. He suggested Elena was paranoid, vindictive, unstable. Ms. Voss, you've painted yourself as a victim. But isn't it true that you were difficult to live with? That you refused to seek help for your depression? That you made Mr. Hale's life miserable with your constant accusations and suspicions? No, Elena said firmly. That's not true. You don't think your behavior contributed to the breakdown of your marriage? My behavior was a response to abuse. If that made Victor's life difficult, I'm not sorry. Abuse is a strong word, Ms. Voss. Can you point to a single instance where Mr. Hale physically harmed you? He didn't need to hit me to hurt me. He controlled every aspect of my life. He told me I was worthless. He isolated me from anyone who might have helped. That's abuse. Or that's a bitter ex-wife trying to justify abandoning her marriage and stealing a child. Margaret objected. But Brennan had made his point. He hammered at Elena for another 20 minutes, trying to break her composure, to make her seem emotional and irrational. But Elena held steady, answering each question calmly, refusing to be provoked. When she finally stepped down, she was pale and exhausted, but Daniel could see something else in her expression too, pride. She'd faced her abuser in open court and hadn't backed down. The final witness was Noah. The courtroom went very quiet when he walked to the stand. He looked small in the witness box, but his voice was clear when he was sworn in. Margaret approached gently. Noah, do you know why we're here today? Yes, my dad wants me to come live with him. How do you feel about that? I don't want to. I want to stay with my mom. Can you tell the judge why? Noah looked at Elena, then at Victor, then straight at the judge. Because my mom takes care of me. She helps with my homework and comes to my soccer games and listens when I talk about the ocean. And my dad, when we lived with him, he wasn't like that. He was angry a lot. He made my mom cry. I was scared of him. Scared how? Like I had to be really quiet and really good or something bad would happen. My mom was always scared too. I could tell. What made you think your mother was scared? She jumped when he came home. She was always checking to make sure things were perfect, like she was worried he'd be mad. And sometimes I heard them fighting. He called her bad names. Do you remember what names? Noah's voice was small. He said she was stupid and crazy, and that nobody else would ever want her. There were tears on Elena's face, and Daniel reached through the railing to squeeze her shoulder. Noah, do you love your father? Margaret asked. The question seemed to surprise Noah. He thought about it seriously. I don't know. Maybe I used to, but I haven't seen him in 3 years, and he never called or wrote or anything, so I don't know if he loves me. Would you like to have a relationship with him? Maybe, someday. If he was different, but I don't want to live with him. I want to live with my mom. When Brennan stood to cross-examine, Noah's whole body tensed. The lawyer's voice was superficially kind, but there was an edge to it. Noah, your mother told you what to say today, didn't she? No. She didn't talk to you about this hearing, about what you should tell the judge? She said to tell the truth. That's what I'm doing. But she's also told you stories about your father, hasn't she? Bad things that made you afraid of him. She didn't have to tell me stories. I remember. You were very young. Memory can be unreliable, especially when someone's been influencing you. Nobody's influencing me, Noah said, and there was anger in his voice now. I remember being scared. I remember my mom crying in the bathroom. I remember my dad yelling at her for putting the wrong kind of cheese on his sandwich. Nobody had to make that up. I was there. Brennan tried several more angles, but Noah didn't waver. He answered each question with a 9-year-old's straightforward honesty, and it was devastating in its simplicity. This was a child who remembered being afraid, who'd felt safer once his mother took him away, who didn't want to go back. When Noah stepped down, he walked straight to Elena, who pulled him into her arms and held him, while her shoulders shook with silent sobs. The judge called a 15-minute recess before closing arguments. In the hallway, Daniel held Elena while she cried. He was so brave, she whispered. He gets that from you. Margaret appeared with bottled water. That was good. Noah's testimony was credible and consistent. The judge was paying attention. Do you think it's enough? Elena asked. I don't know, but it's everything we have. When they returned to the courtroom, Brennan delivered his closing argument first. He emphasized Victor's resources, his desire to be involved in Noah's life, Elena's history of mental instability. He suggested that Noah's testimony had been influenced by years of Elena poisoning him against his father. Your Honor, a child needs both parents when possible. Mr. Hale made mistakes during his marriage. He admits that. But he's grown, changed, built a new life. He deserves the chance to be a father, and Noah deserves the chance to know him without the filter of his mother's bitterness. Then Margaret stood. Your Honor, Mr. Brennan keeps talking about what Victor Hale deserves. But this case isn't about what the adults deserve. It's about what's best for Noah. And the evidence is clear. Noah is thriving with his mother. He's happy, healthy, doing well in school. He has a stable home and a parent who puts his needs first. Victor Hale had 9 years to be involved in Noah's life, and he chose not to. He chose work over soccer games, control over connection, his own comfort over his son's well-being. And now, when Elena has built something beautiful for Noah, he wants to take it away. Not because he loves Noah. If he loved Noah, he would have called in 3 years, would have sent a birthday card, would have made any effort at all. No, he wants custody because he can't stand that Elena escaped. This is about punishment, not love. Margaret turned to look at Victor directly. Your Honor, I've seen a lot of custody battles, and I can usually tell when they're about the children and when they're about the adults. This case is clearly about an adult who can't accept that he's lost control. Don't give it back to him. Don't send Noah into that situation. Keep him with the parent who actually sees him, actually knows him, actually loves him. The judge was silent for a long moment after Margaret sat down. Then she spoke. I'll take this matter under advisement. You'll have my decision by the end of the week. And just like that, it was over. They filed out of the courtroom in tense silence. In the hallway, Victor caught Elena's arm. "This isn't finished," he said quietly, his smile gone, his mask finally slipping. "Win or lose, I'll make you pay for embarrassing me like this." Daniel stepped between them. "Touch her again and we call the police." Victor's eyes flashed with rage, but he let go, turning to his lawyers instead. Ashley stood alone nearby, looking lost and confused, already starting to understand what she'd gotten herself into. Outside the courthouse, Elena collapsed onto a bench, her face in her hands. "It's done," she said. "We did everything we could." "Now we wait," Margaret said. "Try not to think about it too much. I know that's impossible, but try." The next 3 days were torture. Elena barely slept, barely ate. She jumped every time her phone rang, convinced it was the court calling with bad news. Daniel stayed with her as much as possible, keeping her grounded, reminding her to breathe. Noah was quieter than usual, clearly processing his own feelings about testifying. Emma, sensing the tension, tried to cheer everyone up with elaborate games and drawings, her 7-year-old heart determined to fix what she couldn't understand. On the third day, Margaret called. "The judge has issued her ruling. Can you come to my office?" Elena's face went white. "Just tell me, please." "I'd rather do this in person." They drove to Margaret's office in silence, Noah in the back seat, holding Elena's hand over the center console. Daniel's heart was pounding so hard he could hear it in his ears. Margaret met them in the lobby, and her face was carefully neutral. They followed her to her office, where she closed the door and pulled out the court order. "Judge Morrison ruled in your favor," she said. Elena made a sound somewhere between a sob and a gasp. "What?" "Full custody remains with you." Victor's request was denied. Furthermore, the judge issued a protective order prohibiting Victor from contacting Noah without your express permission. She cited his controlling behavior during the marriage, his lack of involvement in Noah's life post-divorce, and Noah's clearly expressed wishes to remain with you. "Oh my God," Elena whispered. "Oh my God." The judge was particularly swayed by Noah's testimony. She wrote in her opinion that Noah demonstrated a clear understanding of his own feelings and experiences, and that those feelings deserved weight. She also noted that Victor's sudden interest in custody, combined with his complete lack of contact for 3 years, suggested ulterior motives. Elena was crying now, great shaking sobs of relief. Noah threw his arms around her and they held each other while Margaret smiled. "There's more," Margaret said. "The judge ordered Victor to pay your legal fees, citing the frivolous nature of the custody claim. You'll get a check for the full amount." Daniel felt something in his chest unclench, a tension he'd been carrying for weeks finally releasing. Elena was safe. Noah was safe. They'd won. Outside Margaret's office, Elena fell into Daniel's arms, crying and laughing at the same time. "We did it," she kept saying. "We actually did it." "You did it," Daniel corrected. "You fought for Noah, and you won." They drove to the beach, needing to be somewhere open and free after days of suffocating tension. Elena kicked off her shoes and ran into the surf, laughing, spinning in circles with her arms spread wide. Noah followed her, splashing and whooping with joy. Daniel stood on the sand with Emma, watching them. "Miss Elena is happy," Emma observed. "Yeah, she is." "Are you going to marry her, Daddy?" Daniel looked at his daughter, at her serious little face. "Would you like that?" "I think Mom would like it too. She'd want you to have a family again." The wisdom of children, Daniel thought. They saw things so clearly sometimes. "Maybe someday," he said, "when the time is right." "The time is right now," Emma said with 7-year-old certainty. "You love her. She loves you. Noah and I want to be a real family. What are you waiting for?" Daniel laughed and pulled Emma into a hug. "You make a good point, kiddo." That evening, after the children were asleep, Daniel and Elena sat on her porch watching the stars come out. Elena was still riding the high of relief, her whole body lighter than Daniel had ever seen it. "I can't believe it's over," she said. "I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop." "It's over. Victor lost. The judge saw through him." "What if he appeals?" "Then we fight again." "But Elena, he's not going to appeal. His pride took a massive hit in that courtroom. He's going to slink away and pretend this never happened." Elena nodded slowly. "I think you're right. That's how he operates. Rewrite history so he never loses, just moves on to the next thing. Are you going to reach out to your parents? Daniel asked. Tell them what happened? Elena was quiet for a long moment. I think I will. Not today, maybe not this week, but soon. I want them to know Noah, and I want Noah to know them. That's good. That's really good. She turned to look at him, and in the moonlight, her eyes were bright. Daniel, I need to tell you something. Okay. When I first met you, I was so afraid. Of everything. Of Victor finding us. Of letting someone in. Of being hurt again. But you didn't give up. You kept showing up, kept being steady and kind and present. You fought for me when I couldn't fight for myself. Her voice caught. You saved me. Elena, you saved yourself. I just stood beside you while you did it. Then stand beside me for the rest of it. The rest of our lives. Marry me, Daniel. The proposal caught him completely off guard. He stared at her, speechless. I know it's fast, Elena continued, words tumbling out in a rush. I know we've only been together a few months, but I also know that I love you more than I knew it was possible to love someone. I know that you make me braver. I know that Emma and Noah already think of each other as siblings, and I want to make that official. I know... Daniel kissed her, silencing the nervous flow of words. When he pulled back, he was smiling. Yes, he said simply. Yes, I'll marry you. Elena's eyes widened. Really? Really? I was going to ask you eventually anyway. You just beat me to it. She laughed and cried and kissed him again, and Daniel thought about the journey that had brought them here, two broken people who'd found each other on a beach and decided to be whole together. 6 months later, they stood on that same beach with Emma and Noah beside them, a small group of friends watching as they exchanged vows. Elena wore red, a dress the color of wine that caught the afternoon sun and made her glow. Daniel wore a simple suit, and he couldn't stop smiling. Emma was the flower girl, taking her job very seriously. Noah was the ring bearer, proud and solemn. When the officiant asked if anyone objected, Emma stage whispered, "Don't even think about it," and everyone laughed. They'd combined households the month before, selling Elena's cottage and Daniel's rental and buying a new house together, bigger, with room for their blended family to grow. Noah and Emma each had their own rooms, but they spent most of their time together anyway, thick as thieves. Elena had reconnected with her parents, a tearful reunion that had involved a lot of apologies and forgiveness on both sides. They'd flown out for the wedding, her mother crying through the entire ceremony, her father gruff but tender as he welcomed Daniel to the family. There'd been no word from Victor. Margaret had heard through the legal grapevine that he'd moved to New York with Ashley, though that relationship had apparently already ended. He'd started over somewhere else, with someone new, rewriting his history to exclude the loss. Elena didn't care. She had her son, her freedom, and her future. Victor was just a chapter in a book she'd finished reading. As the officiant pronounced them married, Daniel pulled Elena close and kissed her while their children cheered and their friends applauded. The ocean stretched out behind them, endless and honest, and the setting sun painted everything gold. I love you, Elena whispered against his lips. I love you too. They walked back down the beach hand in hand, Emma and Noah running ahead to collect shells, their laughter carried on the wind. Daniel thought about Sarah, about the life they'd had, and the love that would always be part of him. He felt her blessing in the warm breeze, her approval in the way Emma smiled. Elena squeezed his hand, and he squeezed back this woman who'd been a stranger in a red bikini just a year ago, who'd become his best friend, his partner, his future. What are you thinking about? She asked. How sometimes the best things come from the worst circumstances. How broken pieces can fit together to make something whole. Elena smiled. That's very poetic for a software developer. I have my moments. They reached the house, their house, and stood on the porch watching Emma and Noah play tag in the yard. Two families that had been fractured by loss and pain now blended into something new and beautiful. Do you ever miss it? Daniel asked. The simplicity of being alone? No complications? No one else's baggage to carry? Elena looked at him, and her green eyes were clear and bright. Not for a second. Simple is overrated. I'll take complicated with you over simple alone any day. Even when I leave my socks on the floor? Even then. Even when I make terrible puns? Especially then. They kissed again, sweet and easy. Two people who'd learned that love didn't fix everything, but it made the hard parts worth enduring. Inside, they made dinner together while the children set the table. They ate as a family, sharing stories about their day, making plans for the weekend. Noah wanted to go to the tide pools. Emma wanted to build a fort. Daniel wanted to sleep past 7 for once in his life. After the children were in bed, Daniel and Elena sat on their back porch with wine, watching stars emerge in the darkening sky. "I've been thinking," Elena said, "about going back to painting, really committing to it." "You should. You're talented." "I'm rusty. It's been almost 10 years. "So practice. Take a class. Set up a studio in the spare room." Elena smiled. "You make it sound so simple." "It is simple. You want to paint, so paint. Don't let Victor's voice in your head tell you it's impractical or foolish. He's gone, Elena. You're free." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "I am, aren't I? Finally, completely free. And loved." "And loved," she agreed. They sat in comfortable silence, two survivors who'd found each other in the wreckage and built something beautiful from the remains. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, work deadlines and parent-teacher conferences and the endless logistics of blended family life. But tonight, they had this moment of peace. A year ago, Daniel had been a widower drowning in grief, certain his life was over at 34. A year ago, Elena had been a woman hiding from her past, building walls to keep the world at bay. Now they were a family. Not perfect, not uncomplicated, but real and solid, and theirs. Elena stood, pulling Daniel up with her. "Come to bed," she said. "I want to fall asleep next to my husband." "Husband," Daniel repeated, trying out the word. "That's going to take some getting used to." "We have time," Elena said, and kissed him. "All the time in the world." They went inside together, turning off lights and locking doors, checking on sleeping children one last time before retreating to their own room. And as Daniel held Elena in the darkness, listening to her breathing slow and deepen into sleep, he felt something he hadn't felt since Sarah died. Complete. Not because Elena had filled the void Sarah left, nothing could do that, but because he'd learned that the human heart was big enough for multiple loves, that grief and joy could coexist, that broken people could become whole without erasing their scars. He thought about the woman in the red bikini standing in the surf, trying to disappear into the ocean. And he thought about the woman sleeping beside him now, wearing red as a choice rather than armor, brave enough to choose happiness after years of pain. They'd both been broken. They'd both been scared. But they'd chosen each other anyway, and in that choice, they'd found healing. Outside, the ocean whispered against the shore, constant and endless. And inside, a blended family slept peacefully, no longer running from the past, no longer afraid of the future. Just living, just loving, just being whole, together.